1310 AM.
It's Wednesday, September 29th. Good morning. I'm Andrew Boyle. Right now in Ottawa, 8 degrees, Smiths Falls, 7. And here's what's making news right now. The long climb home is finally over for the remaining 4 miners who were stuck in that Sudbury area mine since Sunday morning. We get the latest from City News reporter Laura Carney.
It was a harrowing ascent to safety and good news this morning from the Totten mine just outside Sudbury, where all 39 miners trapped since Sunday have now made it out safely. The miners trapped at depths of between 900 and 1,200 meters, or the equivalent of 2 CN towers stacked on top of each other, making a long trek up a series of ladders taking hours. This miner, among those who'd been trapped, tells the CBC they train for these types of situations.
Before I started in the mine, I thought the same thing. You think it's scary, but once you get down there, it just looks all the same. It's just rock. So whether you're 6,000 feet or 1,200, you don't know the difference.
The CEO of Valet, which operates the mine, says all the employees are safe now and deserve deep respect for their perseverance and strong will. The workers becoming trapped on Sunday when a scoop bucket being sent underground detached and blocked the mine shaft. They did have access to food, water, and medicine, though, in these underground refuge stations. The company and the Ministry of Labour will now be investigating how this happened. I'm Laura Carney.
City News time at 9:01. Now your forecast with meteorologist Jill Taylor.
It's a rather cool start to our Wednesday. It will be even cooler for tomorrow morning. Do have a slight chance of showers for today and tonight. High near 15 degrees, just 6 for the low. For today, the high, 15.
And right now in Ottawa, 8 degrees. In Smiths Falls, it's 7. COVID test positivity is down overall in Ontario. Infections are on the rise, though, in younger children who aren't currently eligible for a vaccination, and that's in 19 out of the 34 health units across the province. New modelling from the group shows daily case counts could increase next month and in November as well, with more than 1,000 cases if status quo in public behaviour and policy continues. 5,000 cases daily if transmission increases significantly. One Catholic elementary school in Ottawa is closed today due to a COVID spread there. St. Benedict Elementary has at least 13 cases of COVID-19. An event is being hosted on Parliament Hill tonight, the eve of the first National Day for Truth and Reconciliation. The event will honor lost Indigenous children, residential school survivors, and lives and communities impacted by the residential school system in Canada. This gets underway at the Centennial Flame at 7:30. Now, tomorrow, City News Ottawa will present a special show to mark the first ever National Day. The show is hosted by Sam LaPrade and will feature guests including Indigenous artists. Sam tells us when you can tune in to this show.
Well, I'm thrilled to say that on Thursday, September 30th, the show will air between 10 and 12, and there'll also be an encore of the show between 4 and 6 here on City News.
Now, Sam is hoping the show will provide a chance to learn about Indigenous people, culture, and their struggles over the past multiple decades. City News time 9:03. Surveys in a report by the Business Development Bank of Canada suggest more than 60% of businesses are experiencing widespread labor shortage and limiting their growth. The report combines a survey of more than 1,200 Canadian businesses in May and a survey of 3,000 workers conducted in June. The BDC chief economist says the pandemic didn't create Canada's labor shortage, but it made an existing problem even worse. Pierre Cleroux says the key problem is simple demographics. 16% of Canadians are now over the age of 65, and not a lot of young people are entering the job market. I'm Andrew Boyle for News Anytime. Follow up online at ottawa.citynews.ca.
Separating headlines
from hearsay.
It's the Rob Snow Show on Rogers TV and City News.
101.1 FM and 1310 AM.
I wonder when light rail will ever be back up and running again. And when it's back up and running again, I wonder how long it will be back up and running again. Good morning. Welcome to the Rob Snow Show on City News. We're always so happy when you choose to make us part of your day. We have a very busy show ahead for you. We're covering all the big news stories between now and noon, and light rail is certainly one of them. The hits just keep on coming. I suspect that if you went from office to office at Ottawa City Hall, if you could do that, and you polled those in the know, and you asked them, hey, Mr. Manconi, hey, Mr. Canelacos, hey, Mr. Mayor, hey, Mr. Hubley, when will our light rail system return to service? You'd either get 4 different answers, or you'd get the same answer, and that answer would be, I have no idea. No idea at all. What has it been? More than a week now, right? It's been more than a week now. And a week ago, the best guess was that it would be down and out of commission for about 3 weeks. By the sounds of things, that may have been optimistic. And I don't think they know when it's going to be back up and running. Not by the sounds of it. It's all kind of a moving target. And with each passing day that this light rail system of ours is out of service, truth in the service erodes just a little bit more. And it's not just about light rail. It's a story about the entire public transit system, because as we pointed out yesterday, and it was backed up by one of our transit commissioners, and it was backed up the day before by our public transit watchdogs. It's more than light rail and its failure. It's the cascading effect that failure has throughout the entirety of the public transit system. And now it's being floated out there by Councillor Carol Ann Meehan. We should explore buying more buses, which is not where we were supposed to be in the year 2021, buying more buses. Buses were supposed to be retired by the year 2021. We're not supposed to be out shopping for more. Light rail was supposed to be transformative, in the positive sense of the word transformative. It was supposed to attract people to public transit, not repel them. I went back into the archives that I have at home. Pulled up an old city report. Some of the fantastic predictions being made about Ottawa's light rail system and how transformative it would be. How people wouldn't be able to resist it. They'd be going down to City Hall and they'd be dropping off car keys and picking up Presto cards. About a decade ago, the city staff released a report, and it was called The Benefits of Light Rail. The benefits of light rail. By 2031, all of these wonderful things are going to happen in Ottawa because of the benefits of light rail. Well, now 2031 is 10 years from now. Select quotes from this report. This $2.1 billion project is the best, most cost-effective solution to our long-term transit needs. Quote, transit will carry 51% of motorized person trips to and from Ottawa's inner urban area. More than half. Well, I guess maybe that's going to come true as long as you include the replacement buses. I love this one. How's this for dreaming big? Overall, transit ridership will increase by 76% by the year 2031. Well, to that number, I would say today, good luck. 14,000 fewer vehicles on the road. Greenhouse gas emissions cut by 94,000 tons a year. And, you would save money. The Ottawa commuter $1.5 billion by the year 2040. And yet, if you asked this same city staff, when will light rail run again, they couldn't tell you. And we have you covered on that story this morning. Randall Denley standing by, writes for the Ottawa Citizen and the National Post. We're all over the federal political scene today. This is the place to score your political fix. Two great political analysts coming up right after the 9:30 news. Prime Minister had a news conference in our town yesterday, his first news conference post-election. Held that yesterday with Chrystia Freeland. She will remain the country's finance minister and deputy prime minister. Jenna Sudds. Oh, Jenna Sudds. She must be thrilled that she is going to the House of Commons and leaving this city council LRT mess behind. She was there at the news conference. So was Ottawa Mayor Jim Watson. He must be wishing, hey, Jenna, take me with you. Take me with you, Jenna. Jenna. We'll get into some of the details that emerged from that news conference. The Prime Minister, get yourself together, Rob. The Prime Minister is promising a big, bold, ambitious agenda. Big, bold, and ambitious. Don't you love to hear that? I hear that, I'm like, I hide my wallet. Big, bold, and ambitious. What does that mean, though? What are the priorities going to be for the second Trudeau minority government? Childcare, you would have to think that's the big one. But there's another massive climate conference coming up, too. COP26 in Scotland. So get used to hearing again, net zero, decarbonization, crisis, emergency, just transition. Going to hear a lot about that. Just transition, the just transition. All of that's going to be back in a big way. So we're going to cover that. Already speculation about the makeup of the cabinet. This is something we political junkies love to do. The cabinet. Normal people don't care. Political junkies are not normal people. But who's in, who's out, who's being promoted, who's getting booted, who's getting demoted. Here locally, that's a story to watch because of the departure from the front bench of Catherine McKenna. She was a big-time, powerful minister. She was I guess you could say she was the super minister for Ottawa, right? Killed a hospital, for crying out loud. So she's going to become who is going to become the regional minister? Prime Minister has a lot of candidates to choose from. I mean, it's red from one end of the city to the other over to the Gatineau side. And you know what? That's a problem for Conservatives. They can't get elected in Ottawa. They can't get elected in Montreal, Toronto, Vancouver, or any of the big cities. PJ Fournier, the Maclean's polling expert, looked at the election results in the 50 most densely populated ridings and found that the Conservatives didn't win a single seat in the 50 most densely populated ridings. So we're going to get into that as well during your political fix. And I want to marry COVID-19 policy and federal politics when we do the Talkback Hour this morning, which we do every morning here between 10 and 11 o'clock at 750-1310, an hour of phone calls, an hour of your opinions. At this news conference yesterday, Mr. Trudeau was asked about his promise during the election campaign that he would make it mandatory for all federal government workers to be vaccinated in order to return to work. He said that over and over and over again.
Are you prepared to lay off tens of thousands of workers? And can you say in detail how this process is going to work for public workers who mandated to have a vaccine?
I have announced today that it is one of our priorities, as I said before the election, that all workers in the federal public service be vaccinated. The public service and the unions have been working on that over the past number of weeks. We will have more to say when we make the announcement in the coming weeks.
Okay. So that's still the plan. Huge local story, in my opinion, just because of the number of people who work for the federal government in our city. It's 165,000 people. So if that number is a good sample of, say, the general population, and 20% of the general population isn't fully vaccinated yet, what does that mean here locally for this workforce with this policy? We could be talking about tens of thousands of jobs. Maybe 30,000 people not vaccinated working for the federal government right now. What's Mr. Trudeau going to do with those people, given his very firm stance on their need to be vaccinated as a condition of their employment? I want to ask you, what do you think should happen to those government workers? The federal government is this city's largest employer. It could have today tens of thousands of workers not vaccinated. What should happen to them? Trudeau says they need to be vaccinated, or you can't work for the government. So if they refuse to be vaccinated, what should happen? Should they be fired? Is he really going to fire tens of thousands of workers? Should they be fired? Should they be suspended without pay? That's what the government of Quebec is threatening right now to do with 15,000 healthcare workers. In 2 weeks' time, suspended without pay. Or do you let them work from home? If they're working from home and they're not vaccinated, does it matter? I want your opinion on this issue this morning on The Rob Snow Show on City News.
It was devastating, and it's devastating to all small business, but not knowing where it was going to go. But then the renovation market, as people stayed home, took off like wildfire. And for us, yes, we're very lucky, very fortunate that we were able to turn things around. I think a lot of it had to do with our internet presence as well, that I was, kept working on over years, and then it kind of took off. So that was very positive. But now, no, people are staying at home. We're renovating different markets, whether it's a kitchen or a backyard or, your fireplace. They want to cozy things up. So yes, things are extremely busy right now. Right now it's fireplaces, and I think with the snowbirds, a lot of those clients have existing wood fireplaces, so they're looking at inserts. So they want to convert the wood to gas. They don't want to deal with the wood part of it, but they want it clean and easy and efficient, and that's been a major, major increase in our business. The cottage and chalet market has really increased, absolutely. We see that people, that's their staycation now, is either the backyard or their cottage with their close bubble of family. So there's no question that we've seen a big, big increase in that area as well. I've seen a change in the backyard because now the staycation, from my past, being in the pool business, one of our great clients was in the other day, and he's in the pool business. He's booking for 2022. For in-ground pools, okay? So I think what's happened now is that's brought everybody back home, and I think maybe down the road, maybe 3, 4, 5 years from now, we're still gonna see people spending time in their backyards and staying home more. The barbecue area, really, we call it the backyard. So you walk out of your house into a backyard, and it kind of looks like that with the fencing and the sky and things like that. So that is just our fun room. It's just, there's a lot of cool gadgets there that has to do with dealing with charcoal and wood pellet barbecues. To go online, you're going to find, you just Google, romantic fireplaces will come up. The one nice thing about our work is that when the Google reviews, And the Google pictures are phenomenal. We're uploading stuff every day. I have at least 1,000 jobs, real jobs that you can take a look at, either on the Google pictures on the drive, or if you go to our website at romanticfireplaces.com and click on Our Work. It's where we used to load lots of them up, but there's lots of pictures there too. But the great thing about that is they're real. There's testimonials there about people talking about our team. And our team here is unique to everybody else. It's two small teams, but these fellas work for me. They're our guys. So when they go into your home, they care as much about your house as you do.
Strong opinions.
The Rob Snow Show returns on Rogers TV and City News.
101.1 FM and 1310 AM.
Post-media columnist and author Randall Denley is back with us on the Rob Snow Show. Good morning, Randall Denley.
Good morning, Rob.
The Ontario Science Table said yesterday that case counts have flattened, but that exponential growth is still possible. What did you think about the forecast released yesterday?
To me, it's like one of those weather forecasts that calls for a mix of sun and cloud with the possibility of showers. All bases are covered here. You know, numbers could go as high as 5,000, Rob, by November, or possibly 2,000. On the other hand, a few hundred a day would also be possible. It's obviously hard to predict these things, right? Mm-hmm. But I think we need to base a prediction on what's happening now. I do not see Ontario really slackening off on any government-mandated health measures, which would put them in the 2,000 range if this projection is correct. But we're nowhere near that now. And we're told, well, the big factor is, but when the weather gets cold, we're all going inside. I'm sorry, but most people are inside most of the day now. If you're at work, whether you're working from home or in the workplace, you're inside. You're still going to be inside in November and December. Sure, we spend more time outdoors doing stuff, but it's not like there's a lot of big inside things we do with large crowds of people in the winter. And, the big one, I guess, here would be going to see the Senators play, assuming that people actually show up for that. But here you have a rink at 50% capacity and everybody vaccinated. So it doesn't seem to me like a super high risk situation. So I'm just not sure what's going to change that would make the numbers go up much higher than they are. I mean, the pandemic has been unpredictable, but I don't see these numbers. I thought it was kind of telling yesterday that rather than hold their usual media event where, doom was predicted in a stern voice, the thing was just released online.
Yeah, they didn't even have a news conference.
No, they didn't.
If you were a reporter, you kind of had to, if you had the opportunity, you kind of had to corner somebody and ask some questions one-on-one.
Yeah, because I don't think you want, if you're a pandemic monitor, you don't want to be asked, so, okay, 4 weeks ago, you said the numbers were going to be huge, but you were completely wrong. They've gone in the opposite direction. So why would what you say today be in any way credible? Better just to put it out, leave it as it is, not make a big deal out of it. And the government doesn't feel any need to respond to these things directly either anymore. So I think we're making progress in that respect, Rob. We're not quite as freaked out with every little thing as we were. I hope we are.
I also wonder when you see, and we saw this the last time there was a forecast, when you see a number, well, it could be 200 or it could be 5,000. It makes me think the longer this goes on, that's not even a number worth looking at anymore. It's really it's really all about the capacities in the hospitals, which is a situation which is not comparable at all to what's happening in Alberta.
Right, and their worst case scenario here is we could be up to 300 people in ICU, and we're a little under 2 now provincially. Okay. We were told earlier the danger zone begins for ICU capacity at 600. So worst case scenario, we might be at half the capacity that we can devote to COVID-19 in ICU. It would be great if nobody was in ICU, but it is still a pandemic. People are still going to get sick. It's still out there. But I think that at least for now in Ontario, we're in a position where we can not relax our personal vigilance,
yes,
but not spend all our time worrying about it either. It's obsessed the government, it's obsessed the media, it's obsessed the public. And I think it's time to start moving past that now.
Okay. Light rail is a filthy mess. It's terrible right now, given the investment, the time involved, elections, won and lost over this particular plan to go in this particular direction. And as I said from the outset of my program today, if you went down to City Hall and asked the most knowledgeable person when the train will be back up and running, then they wouldn't even be able to tell you. They don't know what's going on. What next with this file, do you think, Randall Denley?
Well, I think that where they should be spending their time is on these trains. I mean, do we buy the wrong train in the first place? Because there have been so many problems with it. If this was a new car that you or I had bought, we'd be taking this thing back to the dealer's lot and handing them the keys and saying, hey, back to you, sue me, not making my payments. Too many problems. I mean, yeah, when things go wrong, okay, we stick the maintenance company with the bill, but that doesn't really help people get around in the city. And how do you have faith in this thing? Even faith that it's safe, much less that it's going to be reliable in the future. The city cut way back on the number of buses it has. We don't need buses anymore. Look, we got light rail. What could go wrong with that? It's just a train running down a track. We've had trains running down tracks for centuries. It's all good. We know how to do this. It turns out that there's been so many problems with these trains now. You would almost think that surely we can find in the world somewhere other trains that have been on the tracks for years and have had a strong reliability record in this kind of climate. I think that's the problem we really need to get down to. And there have been different problems with stations and so forth, but the big problem is the rolling stock. It just doesn't work. And the number of problems they identify. Oh yeah, a loose nut. Wheels could fall off, and it was like on 17 trains. Oh yeah, a loose nut. Who'd look for that? When you're maintaining these things, I mean, what's your checklist? But why are these things happening? It's just not. It just doesn't seem like a good project. And I think as long as we've got those trains running or attempting to run in Ottawa, we're going to have these kind of problems. And maybe it's time to step back and say, like, we got to do something different, even if the city has to take some kind of financial hit. Although you would think, at this point, if you sued the manufacturer and said, yeah, we paid for these trains, they're garbage, you just have a pretty good shot, I would think, at recouping most or all of your money because they are garbage. I mean, how would you stand up and defend these trains if you're the manufacturer? Oh, no, they were good. They ran some days. I mean, they're so below even a minimum expectation. It's ridiculous. And as long as I think our focus is on, well, how do we fix them? What do we need to do? What nut do we need to tighten to make these babies work? There's just been so many things wrong with them, Rob.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm never going to believe they're going to work properly, and I'm sure most other people wouldn't either.
Thank you, Randall Denley. We'll talk soon.
Okay, Rob. Thanks a lot.
Yep. From Post Media, Randall Denley back after the news with your political fix. This is City News.
one for local news in Ottawa and the Valley. This is City News, now on 101.1 FM and 1310 AM.
It's Wednesday, September 29th. Good morning. I'm Andrew Boyle. Right now in Ottawa and in Smiths Falls, 10 degrees, and here's what's making news this hour. Anyone looking to hire workers will likely have a tough time for some time to come. A new report out of the Business Development Bank says while the COVID pandemic isn't the main reason, it certainly hasn't helped the situation. The population is aging, younger people aren't taking the jobs. Income support is a barrier for about 25% of the owners looking for workers, but only 7% say that obstacle is significant. All miners are back on the surface this morning after being stuck in a mine outside Sudbury since Sunday. A blockage in the main tunnel of the mine meant 39 workers on shift had to climb a series of ladders to get back to the surface. The last of those workers emerged this morning. The first of the ceremonies to mark Truth and Reconciliation Day tomorrow is actually this evening, 7:30, at the Centennial Flame on Parliament Hill. Tomorrow, among the events, a 2-hour show right here on City News starting at 10 o'clock with host Sam LaPrade. Indigenous rights campaigner Frida Huson of BC's Wet'suwet'en First Nation has won Sweden's Right Livelihood Award. The foundation that awards, they're known as the Alternative Nobels, recognized her, quote, for fearless dedication to reclaiming her people's culture and defending their land. City News Time at 9:32. I'm Andrew Boyle. For news anytime, follow up online at ottawa.citynews.ca.
The world is changing.
So keep up with Rob.
The Rob Snow Show returns on Rogers TV and City News, 101.1 FM and 1310 AM.
It's time to score your political fix with Geoff Turner, Vice President, Bluesky Strategy Group. Morning, Geoff.
Hey, Rob.
Good to hear from you, sir. And Tim Powers, Chair of Summa Strategies. Good morning.
Good morning. How are you?
Everything is good. Everything is good here, Tim.
Attaboy.
Look, Geoff, let's start with you. The Prime Minister had his news conference yesterday, first post-election news conference here in our city, and he promised a bold and he promised a progressive and he promised an ambitious agenda when Parliament resumes later this fall. What policies do you think will be at the forefront when Parliament returns to work?
Yeah, and after those sort of final election races were settled, it was good to hear him come out yesterday and set out the sort of path forward, especially for those of us who are trying to predict these things. In terms of the policies, I think we obviously have to do the sort of tactical pandemic response. The fourth wave continues. It is worse in some places than others, and there will be measures that have to be taken. I think we've seen the consensus around that in the political parties is fairly common. So I think that stuff will happen, but he underlined in his announcement yesterday their vaccine sort of backstop actions to ensure that progress continues there. And there are a number of areas from the public service to traveling on a plane or airplane or interprovincial bus requiring vaccine to be able to be on there and be safe. I think if you look at the broader picture, climate change is very much a part of that progressive agenda. It is on the minds of many, many voters abroad, and supermajority of voters, I would argue, have that as probably their number one issue besides pandemic and the economic response to the pandemic. And I think the Liberals' plan is inherently economic. I think one of the reasons you'll see that being a big push is because it's a very big project, and it has lots of moving pieces inside government, has lots of funding attached to it, of course, but there's different areas, whether that's targets or industrial change or electrification. There's lots of things to move forward there. And then, of course, there's the things like inclusive economy, childcare, and other things that will help us build back better. So I think you'll see those themes in the coming months.
Okay. Tim, what policies do you think will be front and center when MPs get back at it?
Geoff's on fire today. You got Build Back Better in there, Rob.
You even got Build Back Better in there.
Well done.
Yeah.
If you can build back Rob and I better, you have accomplished something that nobody else could in the history of man. What do I expect in there? I wonder, building off one thing Geoff said there on the pandemic, I think he gets some good points the sooner he can announce, and again, this is with Health Canada, that kids between 5 and 12 are going to get vaccinated. We're led to believe that this is coming in the U.S. Obviously, obviously, I think that's a big announcement that the government would like to get out, because that'll get us so much closer to normal. I think Robbie's got a year where he can really push the envelope, and I think he will try and push the envelope. So I think he's going to try and get, obviously, the child care agreement done with Ontario. I gather that's moving along. You have to imagine there is enhanced climate activity that he wants to do. And, does he do something on pharmacare or the like? Can he afford to? And the broader economic rebuild, which is going to be in everybody's interest. I agree with Geoff. That'll probably be front and center. But I wouldn't be surprised if there's a couple of legacy items he looks for. And as I say, I see one of them being childcare and the other being a more aggressive, from his perspective, addressing of climate change.
Okay, so with childcare, this is interesting because there was some speculation that talks are already happening on this. But we talked last week when we did our Ontario political panel last week that Doug Ford really wants to use the $10 a day childcare to maximum effect as well, because he is soon to be in full campaign mode as well as he seeks re-election next summer. So do you see a childcare agreement between Ontario and the federal government maybe more aligned with the political timeline in Ontario, Geoff, as opposed to whatever plans the Prime Minister might have?
I suppose it can be both, Rob.
Okay.
I think you saw the rollout pre-election of the existing aid agreements, and that showed considerable momentum that was, of course, put on pause for the election, and now that momentum seems to be picked up again. I think it is absolutely shrewd politics from Doug Ford. He has an awful lot of political rehabilitation to go through before he faces the voters again next spring himself, and I think these are the kind of things that he can take off the table. And frankly, try to prove that he's a little bit different than people may have formed an opinion about it. I think, maybe out of full disclosure, as a parent of a toddler, I'm looking forward to this being signed. So I think it's good policy as well. So I think all of those things are contributing to what is finally overdue in Canada as not just social policy, I remind people, but economic policy, and especially economic policy after what we've all been through in the last 2 years, those of us who have kids.
Right. Tim?
Yeah, can I just say on that, Rob?
Sure,
I think the conservative view has changed on this too. While Aaron O'Toole did offer a different version of child care during the campaign at the federal level, I think, as Geoff has alluded to, conservatives provincially, listen, I think they're more inclined to be fine if there are options that are less cost-effective, that are more cost-effective and less costly than existed before. Because again, I think the pandemic maybe has gotten rid of some of the ideology in childcare and created a greater understanding of opportunity that could exist. And Doug Ford, isn't a rigid ideologue either. So if there's a good deal for Ontario that can help him win, I'm sure he's likely going to make it.
Yeah, I was surprised that the Liberals didn't really make the most, in my own opinion, they didn't make the most of their childcare pitch during the election campaign. They were on to other things, on to vaccines and guns. Whereas if they were, they could have been pitching childcare as an economic policy, but they really weren't. I thought it was, if people were concerned about the cost of living, why aren't you pitching $10 a day childcare as a cost of living issue? Hey, I can help you with your cost of living. You're paying $2,000 a month right now in the city of Toronto for childcare. Under our plan, you'll pay $200 a month. It was a pretty easy pitch. A pretty easy pitch, I thought, to make. But I don't think they made maximum effect out of it, Geoff. That's my own opinion. So.
I think I don't disagree with you. I mean, we can do all kinds of postmortems on this campaign and what issues what issues surfaced and what issues didn't. I think one of the things the only thing I would try to speculate about it is that this election, I think, was expected to be a little bit of a retrospective on a successful vaccine program, on things like that child care agreement catching immediate traction in provinces. And the election proved very quickly in the first week that it wasn't going to be about the past. It was going to be very much about the present. And even the future was sometimes blurry at that election. And I think that was one of those victims of the campaign switching tactics to respond to the public mood.
But you get the sense, Tim, that even in conservative circles, there's been I don't know, come to Jesus moment on childcare, or?
Yeah, it's a bit
Really?
like
Okay.
it's a bit like the carbon pricing, right? Like, what's the? Also, because if you're trying to attract female voters and
Big city voters,
you know, in urban areas, this is a more practical reality for people than it is trying to determine your own, as a conservative style, their own choices around daycare. You're still doing that anyway by choosing where to go and what the pricing regime is and all of that. But I think accessibility and affordability are supplanting the ideology of individual choice, because you can still make the argument individual choice exists in the daycare choices that you make. You just aren't randomly assigned daycare for your children. You get to make the choices to where they go.
All right. Say the dads with the little kids on Rob Snow's political panel.
There you
morning,
go. We're all growing up, Rob. You need one too.
Look, it's a minority government, so there are going to be demands. One assumes compromises will have to be made. What do you see as the priorities for the other parties, in particular the NDP? Geoff Turner.
Well, I think the NDP, what I've heard coming out of the election is they wanted to go immediately to some of their tax proposals as conditions. So I think I'll keep an eye on that, because those will be pretty explosive issues, I imagine, and we'll see if they stick to that as one of their initial bargaining chips. I think what I'm watching, zooming out just a little bit, there are the issues, and I think there's tons of common ground. And as we all know, the Liberals have their choice of partner from any of the three parties. I, for one, would like to see the Conservative Party find something that they can work with the government on. I think that would be a very shrewd move on there, just like I said about Doug Ford in the same way about Erin O'Toole. But what I'll be zooming out and looking at as well is how the Parliament is functioning, because that was the issues that we were running into before the election. And frankly, just the level of toxicity that forms in committees, because committees is where minority parliaments are hung out to dry. You can pass legislation. Everybody's afraid of confidence votes, especially when they have no money or they don't want to go back to an election. But in committees, the opposition, you can do almost anything you want. And so I'll be watching to see whether the opposition parties are using that to maximum effect and perhaps poisoning the well a little bit, or whether there's a bit more of a cooperative tone that we're all looking for, because I think that's where you'll see the friction, not so much in the budget bills or the high confidence, high drama moments. I think that's where the nitty gritty of this Parliament will be seen.
Okay, Tim Powers.
With the NDP, look, I think they're obviously gonna try and push one of their bigger social policies, and that's where I make the point about pharmacare, but I don't think we can afford it right now. But they may push on that. Wage fairness and employment equity, I think, are obvious points of agreement there for the NDP. I think Mr. Singh can't stretch too much, because he is getting a little bit of leadership grumbling, so he does have to demonstrate that even though he has 24 MPs, the proposition of the person who can get deals done is real. So he's got to get something that make the Liberals work for it a little bit. But I don't think we'll see big, bold, and ambitious. I cannot imagine, because I don't see the Liberals embracing it, that this foolish notion of the wealth tax and how this was going to fund NDP programs will get the light of day, but there may be things that come off the wealth tax, targeted measures against certain people that may prove to grow.
Okay, we'll be right back with part 2, your political fix, on the Rob Snow Show on City News.
We just took over this business about a few weeks prior to the pandemic, but we've been loving the community, the people, very friendly, but it's been very difficult starting up a new business, just the time that we did, but I'm sure it's the same everywhere. We did take a broken business, which doesn't help us, but we thought we believe in what we do. We're very passionate about food, and we just really wanted to share the Iraqi culture through our food. All our recipes are homemade, so this is very unique. Usually you hear restaurants, shops, it's all frozen food or prepared food. So nothing here is prepared, everything is homemade. We get our meat and produce from a local farm. So supporting local is the way to go. We are supporting all the way. And our meat are actually marinated the day of, so it's as fresh as can be. Quality ingredients and everything is made from scratch. I get a lot of people when they come in, they say it tastes like Middle Eastern, like back home. So for you to have been to Iraq and had the food there, you can really like compare and see the similarity. We do like to focus on healthy. So our recipes, not only the homemade, again, everything is from scratch, but we have like from combos and to like small sandwiches. One of our favorites and very popular is the chicken salad and the beef salad. So now you're getting all the protein and all these amazing ingredients that we all need. During this time, I find a lot of people are sitting at home and not enough movement. So to come here and get something healthy other than go elsewhere and just put, what's not so good for our bodies, makes a huge difference. So we have shawarma sandwiches, combos. I mean, if you're looking for a meal to feed your family, I would highly recommend the family platter. It comes literally with everything, with potatoes, with rice, with chicken, with beef, and we don't charge extra for mix. I know a lot of places do. Here we just add everything to your platter. And lots of healthy choices for sure. We're very passionate about food, and for our small family business, it's been good. Like I said, it's a little struggle, but we are not a chained restaurant.
Fair.
Fun.
The Rob Snow Show returns
on Rogers TV and City News 101.1 FM
and 1310 AM.
Part 2, your political fix. Geoff Turner, Vice President, Bluesky Strategy Group. Tim Powers here from Summa Strategies. Cabinet speculation is always fun for a tiny percent of the population, like the three people who are talking right now. But the Prime Minister made it be known yet. I don't think this is like any major shock or anything. Chrystia Freeland's not going anywhere. She'll remain Minister of Finance, Deputy Prime Minister. Who could be in the new Trudeau cabinet? Names, faces to watch, Geoff Turner.
Well, I think speculation on the who is often wrong, and the where it is. There are a lot of moving pieces to cabinet making, and that often creates so many different possibilities that it's hard to predict.
All right, don't be a Debbie Downer here. Come on.
What the Prime Minister has, though, Rob, is 4 empty chairs right now, and all 4 former cabinet ministers women. And so now he's made a solid commitment to continuing gender parity, and that's the right thing to do. And so there will be a net gain of 4 women from the current backbenches or the new crop of MPs who have just been elected, and there are many good candidates there. So I think we will see some really either worthy, well, they'll all be worthy promotions, but we'll see some either from the backbench or from those new crops that I think will stand out. On the rest of it, I think then you come down to the option: does the cabinet grow, or do some people get demoted and or retire in some fashion? And so I think that's the big question that we'll all be watching for. I think there's peril on both sides of that, but I think cabinet making is not just the reason why people like us watch it so closely. It's not just about the intrigue of who goes where and who has more power than others or whatever. It is important, and it's an important signal to voters and to the media and to the public about what the priorities are and where the emphasis is being put. And I think this is an opportunity at the beginning of a mandate, and the Prime Minister has a moment, of course, coming out of this to make a point with his cabinet, and he has done that before. And I would look to see what kind of point they make. I'm not quite sure.
Okay. Tim Powers?
Well, first of all, Geoff has to know Rob is terrible at predictions, and he never
I am.
Right?
Yeah,
he is 0 for 3,000 on all his predictions. So important to get that out there. Full credit to Geoff.
So go we all.
Okay.
Yeah, well, it's true. And full credit to Geoff. He never mentioned his name. So I'm going to go with the complete other way. I'll probably end up with Rob's Snow record here. So a couple of interesting things. Geoff ended on this. Who goes? I mean, I can't imagine Harjit Sajjan staying in defense. How can he?
Right.
So where does he end up? Does he end up out of cabinet? Carolyn Bennett, another person who got in trouble, as you will recall, towards the end of her mandate, who has been the Crown Indigenous Minister, for 7 years. I can't imagine that Carolyn stays in that particular role. Looking around Ottawa gets kind of interesting, as Geoff rightly pointed out, and I don't think the Prime Minister will vary from this, keeping parity gender-wise at the cabinet table. So does that mean somebody like, a new MP like Janice Sudds or Anita Vandewald or others in Ottawa get in?
Well, Mona Fortier, you would think.
Mona Fortier at a higher level.
Yeah.
What happens to Yasser Nagvi, an experienced provincial minister, also a candidate of diversity? They could perhaps use someone like that at the cabinet table. The other thing I'd add is they're going to have a minister from Alberta for the first time since 2015, and they're two.
Keep him out of the mailroom, whoever it is, if it's that guy from
George
Skyview.
So he would, perhaps they both end up in cabinet. Randy Boisseau was a parliamentary secretary before. He's in there. I think the PM will keep people like Chrystia Freeland, as he's already said he will, in key roles there. And I'm really fascinated, Rob, to see who's going to come out of Nova Scotia, because, of course, the Bernadette Jordan lost.
Yes.
Does Sean Fraser go into cabinet? But then how do they find gender parity in Atlantic Canada? Does Jenica Atwin, who switched over from the Greens and won the Fredericton, does she get into cabinet? Maybe she does.
Okay. Now, just on Tim's little slight at me there, I will only say you miss 100% of the shots you don't take. Okay, that will be my comeback. Okay, all right. But I'm very curious what happens here locally. I don't think there's any question whether it was gender issues and certainly environment and climate change. I mean, Catherine McKenna was the go-to minister, and she was the super minister here for the National Capital Region. And we've had some good ones, I think. We've been lucky that way. Catherine McKenna, John Baird, John Manley. We've had these big name cabinet ministers. So I want to know who steps into that role, because look, we're the capital city. There's a lot happening here. There are a lot of competing interests that have to come together to move projects ahead. And you need somebody who is really entrenched in that and knows all the pieces and all the problems and all the possibilities. I'd be curious to see who the Prime Minister taps for that. Is it somebody on the Quebec side? Is it Mona Fortier? Is it Anita Vandewald? Or is it Yasser Nagvi, who has a dozen years of experience in government in Ottawa Centre? Yeah, tough choice for him, I guess. So let's see what happens with that. All right, that's enough cabinet speculation. Conservatives' big city problem. This is from the polling expert for Maclean's, Mr. Fournier. Out of the 50 most densely populated ridings, Liberals won 43, the NDP won 6. One went independent, but he was running as a Liberal for most of it, Spadina, Fort York. 0 out of 50 for the Conservatives. 0 for 50 in the most densely populated ridings. Tim, why can't Conservatives get elected in the cities?
Because when they don't talk to people in the cities the right way, it's part and parcel of it. And the caucus is still heavily dominated, which is fine, by many from rural and western ridings, and there's an issue disconnect. It's not just a thing around leadership. I think O'Toole's done a bit better on that, despite some of the criticism he's receiving now. I think Conservatives need to look at somebody like Melissa Landsman, who everybody on this call knows was well-known in the Ford government, a consultant, just won in Thornhill outside of Toronto. I think people like Melissa and others who are in the cities need to help Aaron O'Toole and the Conservatives plot a strategy forward. It goes back to what we talked about a moment ago, the disconnect on childcare. If you're in Ottawa, you're in Toronto, you're in Montreal, Calgary, Edmonton, this choice in childcare argument is not as appealing as $10 a day daycare, which deals with direct affordability. So Conservatives got to find a way to connect to affordability and value issues in cities. And I think there are a couple of people now who have joined the Conservative team. Adam Chambers, though elected, and Bruce Gray is spent a lot of time in Toronto, worked for Jim Flaherty. A lot of these new MPs should be charged with helping guide Aaron O'Toole and the Conservatives forward in cities.
His name keeps coming up on these political panels. Adam Chambers.
Yeah, you watch Adam. Watch Adam and watch Melissa Landsman. They're two new MPs. They've got a lot of potential.
All right. Geoff, what's wrong with the Conservatives in the big city?
I mean, Tim's absolutely correct. Not being spoken with by the Conservative Party in a way that resonates or speaks to the priorities in many cases. I think I'll just step back and I'll take even my red hat off for a second. It's the same problem that both parties have. If you look at the mirror image of, say, a Liberal or NDP vote in a deep blue, rural, remote riding. And I think the problem that we have and that we're increasingly really aware of, and I think a lot of people struggle with how to fix it or how to at least bend the curve, is that both of those places use the other to drive their own agenda or to criticize or to hold up as the opposite of what they want. And I think the problem we've had in our politics, especially in the last 20 years, is just feeding that through an increasingly, the bubble that we all talk about. You only read and hear what you signed up for. You only read and hear what your neighbors are talking about or what their people on Facebook are talking about. And I think that's a real big problem. And I think that's a problem for Conservatives in places that are more dense, to your point, and it's a problem for Liberals in places that they can't be very competitive in some parts of this country. So I think it's something that we all need to see a bit of change in, and the Conservatives are taking some steps in that way. And it's against my partisan interests, but it is as my interest as a citizen. I hope Aaron O'Toole does well and manages to move this thing, because the biggest issue is the folks who are really digging in and dragging their feet towards that more centrist vision. And I wish him luck, because I don't know if that's the majority of the minority in his membership.
All right. That's our time. Thank you so much for this week. Great to hear from you. Great stuff.
Take care.
Thanks, Rob.
That is your political fix. Very satisfying. Geoff Turner, Vice President, Bluesky Strategy Group, and Tim Powers from Summa Strategies, chair there. Talkback Hour, 750-1310. We're talking mandatory vaccinations for the largest employer in the city of Ottawa, the Government of Canada. When we come back, Rob Snow Show, City News.
news in Ottawa and the Valley. This is City News, now on 101.1 FM and 1310 AM.
It's Wednesday, September 29th. Good morning. I'm Andrew Boyle. Right now in Ottawa and in Smiths Falls, 10 degrees, and here's what's making news right now. The effort to rescue 39 miners trapped underground just outside Sudbury for days does have a happy ending. City News reporter Laura Carney with the latest on that operation.
The remaining 4 miners making it to the surface overnight, so all 39 are now safely out, uninjured. It was an exhausting climb for the miners, trapped at depths of between 900 and 1,200 meters. Think 2 CN towers stacked on top of each other. They had to scale a series of ladders, taking it rung by rung. For miner Henry Bertrand, he says it was a grueling climb to the top.
Oh, I got spaghetti arms. They're still pretty sore yet. We're in not bad shape. It was not too bad. I mean, it was really hard on the arms and legs physically and all that, but if you just take your time and pace yourself, it wasn't that bad.
The workers became trapped in the mine on Sunday when a scoop bucket being sent underground detached and blocked the mine shaft. Now begins the investigation into just how this happened. I'm Laura Carney.
City News time at 10:02. A traffic note this hour. Firefighters on the scene of a fire in an apartment at a high-rise on Richmond Road just east of Woodruff. Now your forecast with meteorologist Jill Taylor.
It's a rather cool start to our Wednesday. It will be even cooler for tomorrow morning. Do have a slight chance of showers for today and tonight. High near 15 degrees, just 6 for the low. For today, the high 15.
And right now it is 10 degrees in both Ottawa and in Smiths Falls. Latest numbers from COVID cases today in Ontario, 495 new cases, along with 8 more deaths. Now, 39 of these new cases are in Ottawa, 5 in Eastern Ontario. There are 2 in Leeds, Grenville, Lanark, and no new cases today in Renfrew. The case numbers come from just over 36,400 tests that were done. The Ottawa Hospital is launching clinical trials of a potential COVID-19 vaccine booster. They're looking for people to take part in their study. Researchers say this new study is promising. It uses a spike protein from the beta variant to gain additional protection against transmission of the virus. Now, who they're looking for would be a healthy adult who's received 2 doses of an mRNA vaccine over 4 months ago. If you would like to take part in that study, you're asked to contact the Ottawa Hospital. There has been some progress in the worldwide fight against COVID-19. The World Health Organization estimates there has been a 10% global drop in the number of new cases.
The WHO finds the number of new cases and deaths worldwide has continued to fall in the past week, with an estimated 3.3 million new infections and about 55,000 deaths. That's a 10% drop in both. In its regular assessment of the pandemic, the UN Health Agency says the biggest drops in new cases were seen in the Middle East, the Western Pacific and the Americas, with all regions reporting more than a 15% decline in deaths, with the exception of Europe and Africa. I'm Charles de Ledesma.
City News time, 10:04. The first event to take place in the capital for the Truth and Reconciliation Day tomorrow will actually happen tonight at Centennial Flame on Parliament Hill. That gets underway at 7:30. Now, tomorrow, City News will be presenting a special show. Host Sam LaPrade tells us what she feels makes this show so important.
What's really important about this show, I think, is the opportunity for myself and for anybody spending time with us that day to really learn about Indigenous people, about culture, about the challenges that they faced over many, many decades and if not centuries.
And that show runs tomorrow from 10 until noon. I'm Andrew Boyle for News Anytime. Follow up online at ottawa.citynews.ca.
It's time to talk back
on the Rob Snow Show.
Have your say and call now.
613-750-1310.
Okay, we're going to do this rapid poll style. I'm keeping score here. I've got 3 possibilities for you. Fired, suspended without pay, or work from home. What should happen to federal government workers who refuse to be vaccinated? That's my question for you this morning here for the Talkback Hour. What should happen to federal government workers who refuse to be vaccinated? Again, our call-in line is 750-1310. 750-1310. 613-750-1310. Should they be fired? Suspended without pay? Or do you allow them to work from home? I want your input on this question because yesterday afternoon, Mr. Trudeau had a news conference here in Ottawa, along with Chrystia Freeland and Jenna Sudds, the newly elected Canada area member of parliament, and Ottawa Mayor Jim Watson. And this news event was held to thank the workers on the front lines helping people get vaccinated. And it was also a chance for Mr. Trudeau to tell us all what he really plans to do when Parliament is back later this fall about this promised vaccine mandate for federal public servants. And he was asked about it, and he had his answer ready. We have the question and the answer here. David, all right, roll tape.
Are you prepared to lay off tens of thousands of workers? And can you say in detail how this process is going to work for public workers who you've mandated have a vaccine?
I have announced today that it is one of our priorities, as I said before the election, that all workers in the federal public service be vaccinated. The public service and the unions have been working on that over the past number of weeks. We will have more to say when we make the announcement in the coming weeks.
Okay. There is an announcement coming in the coming weeks. To me, 750-1310, to me, it's a very important local story. Okay. The federal government is the city's number one employer. We're the capital city. More people work for the federal government than for any other employer. This is news of great importance here. And I think it's very important that we follow all the developments and see how this all rolls out, comes together when the policy is eventually revealed. Doesn't sound like they've dotted all the I's, crossed the T's yet. But I think about the enormity of this, okay, just from a numbers point of view. According to a recent report, the latest estimate is we have 165,000 people in Ottawa working for the federal government. 165,000 people just in Ottawa, let alone on the Gatineau side. I don't know the number of people who live in Gatineau who work for the federal government. It's probably a significant number. And then you take in all the other West Quebec municipalities, and then take in all the outlying communities of Eastern Ontario, the Rocklands and the Arnpriors and the Renfrews, and you get the idea. It's a big number. Probably by the time you include all of them, it might be 200,000 in the greater national capital region working directly for the federal government. And the Prime Minister said repeatedly on the hustings, they're going to need to be vaccinated if they want to keep their jobs. But let's stick with this number, okay? 165,000. Let's just go with that number. Just work with me. Work with me, people. 165,000. According to the most recent news reports, 80% of eligible Canadians over the age of 12 have been fully vaccinated now against COVID-19. As of last night, it's 80% of eligible Canadians over the age of 12 fully vaccinated. Well done. Thumbs up. 80% fully vaccinated. Who is not getting vaccinated at this point? Who is not getting vaccinated at this point? I'm sure there are people that can't be vaccinated for legitimate medical reasons. But I suspect, and these are just my own suspicions, that we have reached kind of a critical mass, all right? That we're at the point now where we're just running into resistance now. Because it's not that there's a shortage of vaccines or a shortage of vaccine clinics, okay? There's no reason for people not to be vaccinated at this point. It's because of vaccine hesitancy, it's because of hardcore anti-vaccine views. That's my opinion. Now, I like round numbers, so let's work from the assumption that this 20% of the population that is not vaccinated, they don't plan to get a COVID-19 vaccine anytime soon, if ever. They're just not going to do it. Or they would have done it by now. And let's work from another assumption. Let's work from the assumption that 165,000 people who work for the federal government here in Ottawa is a relatively good sample of the general population of Canada. And let's say the views about vaccines in the general population, if you were to do a survey among public sector workers, you would find generally the same viewpoints on vaccines. Well, if all of those assumptions are even remotely true, you would be talking about north of 30,000 people in our city employed by the federal government who, I'm willing to round it down because I like round numbers, give the public service a benefit of the doubt. Let's call it 30,000 people. 30,000 people right here in our community working for the federal government that for one reason or another have decided of their own free will they're not going to be vaccinated. What should happen to them? What should happen to those people? What should the consequences be for those workers? 30,000 of them making good money. Really good money, earning a good living. They are our friends, our neighbors. Most of them, I wouldn't be surprised, they're hardworking people. Trying to get by, trying to raise a family, whatever. But they've made this decision, they don't want to get the vaccine. What should their employer, the federal government, do? What consequences should they face for that decision? We're talking about the largest employer in our city, maybe around 30,000 people. Rough estimate. Maybe at risk of losing their jobs if they refuse to be vaccinated. What should happen to them? Should they be fired? Fired. Are we about to see Justin Trudeau's Ronald Reagan moment? Memories. Boy, that would be something to see, wouldn't it? Justin Trudeau with a Ronald Reagan moment. Remember, air traffic controllers in the United States staged an illegal strike. Ronald Reagan was president, and he said, if you don't go back to work, you're fired. You're fired.
Government cannot close down the assembly line. It has to provide without interruption the protective services which are government's reason for being. It was in recognition of this that the Congress passed a law forbidding strikes by government employees against the public safety. Let me read the solemn oath taken by each of these employees, the sworn affidavit when they accepted their jobs. I am not participating in any strike against the government of the United States or any agency thereof, and I will not so participate while an employee of the government of the United States or any agency thereof. It is for this reason that I must tell those who fail to report for duty this morning they are in violation of the law, and if they do not report for work within 48 hours, they have forfeited their jobs and will be terminated.
Yeah. And they didn't go back to work, and what did he do? He fired them. He fired them, right? I wonder if the Prime Minister would really have it in him to fire a single public servant in this town. But hey, he sure sounded like it during the election campaign. Okay. Hot issue, as you well know, during the election campaign. Maybe one of the reasons why Trudeau is still Prime Minister and Aaron O'Toole is not. This whole issue of mandatory vaccines for federal government workers.
And on vaccines, let's be clear. What Aaron O'Toole is planning
is just wrong. He can't even demand that his own candidates get vaccinated. He's worried about protecting anti-vaxxers in his caucus. Mr. O'Toole is asking his candidates to hide their status from Canadians, with his candidates who aren't fully vaccinated campaigning inside seniors' homes. And he welcomes people who are putting other people at risk. The mobs of anti-vaxxers, the far-right anti-vax wing of his own party, because he's defending the freedoms of anti-vaxxers who are putting us all at risk. Even Doug Ford has said that he'll make vaccines mandatory. O'Toole, he's having to leave room for the anti-vaxxer, and it just isn't right.
Holy cow, David, on fire. Yeah, a hot issue during the election campaign. Mandatory vaccines, federal government employees, what should happen to them if they refuse to be vaccinated? 750-1310, 750-1310. Should they be fired? Suspended without pay? Or allowed to work from home? Your call's next. This is the Rob Snow Show on City News.
Here at the Thirsty Maiden, we offer a variety of products. So everything from breakfast items, so it's breakfast sandwiches and scones, which have become a staple item here at the cafe. We have an assortment of pastries and cakes and desserts. So we're really big on our dessert bar, which a lot of people come here for. And of course, our delicious coffee beverages. So we do offer not your typical lattes, things like a chocolate banana coconut latte, cinnamon coconut, which is my favorite, and our take on even a pumpkin spice, which we add nutmeg and a dash of cayenne in just to give it a bit of a kick. When you start a business, you don't factor in all the things that could go wrong. You think anything that goes wrong, any failure, is got to be something on your shoulders. You didn't market right, you're carrying the wrong products, you didn't price your items correctly, all the things, right? But when this pandemic began, things going through my brain were I didn't factor in a pandemic. And we were just starting to grow. We were about to blow up, and I think I spent 2 days crying. And then I shut my business down for, I think, a period of 2 or 3 days. And just being at home during that time, I realized this is not me. Anybody that knows me knows I'm a hard worker. I don't give up, and I'm a go-getter. And I started to think, well, I should probably just start clearing out my freezers and posting and seeing who wants to buy what. And that was sort of how I built my momentum back up. I realized that there's still a large number of people that wanted to support us and were looking for the items that I had to provide. So we started there. Then I reopened literally not even 3 or 4 days after I'd closed my doors, and then started doing curbside pickups and deliveries. Started doing the deliveries myself, free deliveries to the local community, going as far as Bell's Corners and Carp as well. And that's why we're still here. This community has really kept us going a year into the pandemic. We've had a changeover of staff a couple times now, and situations change, and when you can't offer hours and hours for your employees, you don't blame them when they have to go elsewhere. So I think that's also been one of the challenges is recruiting, training, and then they leave, and then bringing in more people and recruiting. And anybody in this industry will tell you that that's something we deal with on a regular basis, whether or not COVID's in the mix or not. But more so now, because every time there's a lockdown, there's a risk of, will we make it through? And then you lay off more staff. And again, their situations and their circumstances change.
Hello. On the Rob Snow Show. The phone lines are open at 613-750-1310.
Now, the Rob Snow Show continues.
What should happen to federal government workers who refuse to be vaccinated? This came up yesterday during Prime Minister Trudeau's news conference. We're working on it. That policy of mandatory vaccination that I told you about, that I repeated time and again was going to happen if you reelected me. Well, it's coming. So what should happen to those federal government workers? We're talking tens of thousands, potentially tens of thousands of unvaccinated public servants here in Ottawa. What should happen? Should they be fired? Okay, you refuse to be vaccinated. Sorry, you're out of a job. No jab, no job. How about suspended without pay? Okay, well, hold your job for you for a while. And then we'll see what happens. Maybe then you'll decide to be vaccinated, and then we'll pay you again. Another option, I suppose. Or should they be allowed to work from home? That's a possibility, I guess. I mean, most government workers in our city, they're not in the office towers of the capital. They're working from home. And whenever it's been put to Treasury Board or the big public sector unions, when are government workers going to get back into the workplace? The answer has always been, and I've asked the question of the unions, the answer has always been, well, we're not going back to work anytime soon in an office tower in Ottawa. So maybe the case could be made. I'm working from home. Why does it matter if I'm vaccinated or not? I'm not in an office environment. I'm not in a workplace environment. I'm not putting my co-workers in harm's way. I'm working in my home office, spare bedroom, garage, basement, who knows what. I don't know. I'm throwing it out there. Let's get to some calls. Glad to see it's catching on here. Jeremy in Ottawa. Jeremy, you're on City News. Good morning.
Hi, Rob. Good morning,
Jeremy. What should happen to federal government workers who refuse to be vaccinated?
My personal opinion?
Yes, sir.
I believe that everyone in Canada should have the same rights and freedoms that we've had for centuries, since World War I, since World War II, when our ancestors fought and died for those same rights. I believe that those rights should be upheld, and nothing should change that. So therefore, I believe that people should have the right to choose.
The right to choose. The right to choose. Okay. But there are limits on all sorts of decisions, right, that people can make. Right, there are consequences all the time for the decisions that people make, right?
Yep.
You know, whether that's impaired driving, you could say, right?
Oh yeah.
You know, you can go and drive impaired, but you'll face a stiff penalty if you're caught by the cops. If you're stunt driving, they'll impound your vehicle, whatever, right? If you go boating without a life jacket, you have the freedom to do that. But if you're busted by a Marine unit, they might take your boat away from you. Mm-hmm. Right? You can't sit in a restaurant and light up a cigarette. I suppose you could. You have the freedom to do that, but you'll get a pretty hefty fine for doing that. Right? So what's the difference with vaccination then?
The difference is because there's a thing called the Nuremberg Code that protects our rights to...
Nuremberg Code?
Yeah. Yeah, man.
Yeah, man.
Because I believe the Pfizer vaccine only just got put into another stage of testing, which would mean that there is still a thing on the people where...
Is that part of the Nuremberg Code or what? You kind of lost me there, Jeremy.
Yeah, there can't be any duress, deceit, or coercion involved.
Okay. So you would view the threat of some kind of sanction in the workplace because you're not vaccinated. You would view that as being coercive. Is that right?
Yes, I would.
You would. Okay. All right, Jeremy. Thank you. All right. Next, Irene in Ottawa. 750-1310. Irene.
I think the question is should be. What should happen? It should be what will happen.
What will happen?
And I don't think Trudeau will do anything. During the campaign, like when he was with Legault in Quebec, it was like, oh yeah, we're gonna enforce this, and it'll be the 15th of October, didn't he say? And they're not even going back to work until when? Late November?
Well, he said late fall. Yeah, Parliament, late fall,
right?
Yeah.
And in my opinion, I don't think he's going to do it because...
You don't think he's going to do it? He doesn't have it in him, right?
No,
right.
He doesn't, because it's the unions. He can't go against the Peace Act. The Peace Act loves him, right? And I mean, like...
Well, and they're not in love with this policy. I have their latest statement.
No, they're not.
But, yeah.
And if I were still working, or if I was still paying union dues to the Peace Act, which I resented for years...
Right, okay.
I would prefer to stay at home and work from home.
Work from home.
work from home, then I'm saving all that time on the road, especially with the lovely public transit in Ottawa, right?
Yeah.
And then the cost, I mean, I don't think it's going to happen because Trudeau already ticked them off with the Phoenix pay system, right?
Oh, sure, yeah.
Like there's history there.
Yeah.
And he wasn't serious. He said that just as a wedge issue. Now it may happen for people who have to go to work, like those who work at the banks, those who were employed on the trains and planes and stuff like that, those who work in the prison system, right? But for the office workers, not going to happen.
Not going to happen, and you think working from home might be a viable compromise? Is it fair enough to?
It keeps them all happy because you know what? You're not on the road. You're not. You're not on the bus.
All right. Thank you. I do wonder if that's going to be a compromise in the end with this. I'd certainly like to know what you think about that. Unvaccinated public servants being allowed to keep their jobs as long as they work from home? Or would you take a hard line and say, no, this is now a condition of working in the federal public service. If you want to work for the federal government, it's a condition of your employment. You must be vaccinated, end of story, full stop. It doesn't matter if you're working at Place de Portage or in your home office at your house in the suburbs. We have one standard for all of our employees, and that standard is you are fully vaccinated or you are out of a job. 750-1310. We have reached halftime during the talkback hour. I am surprised that there is not more interest in this. This is the largest employer in the city, and the Prime Minister said this is a big priority for his government. Mandatory vaccines, something that would affect tens of thousands of people in our community. Your comments, please, at 750-1310. Back after the news, Rob Snow Show City News.
News in Ottawa and the Valley. This is City News, now on 101.1 FM and 1310 AM.
It's Wednesday, September 29th. Good morning. I'm Andrew Boyle. Right now in Ottawa, 11 degrees, 12 in Smiths Falls, and here's what's making news this hour. Company and union officials are thanking the rescue teams who safely brought 39 trapped miners to the surface at the Totten mine near Sudbury. The last 4 miners came out early this morning. Now, a team of 58 responders from the company rescue team and the Ontario Mine Rescue Agency helped those workers make a long trek up a ladder system. Ottawa police looking for witnesses to a crash at Bronson and Somerset Street West. It happened just before 7 last night, a collision between a black Cadillac and a pink bicycle. The 58-year-old bike rider was taken to hospital with life-threatening injuries. Police would like to speak to any eyewitnesses, also those who may have dash cam footage. There are 495 new cases of COVID-19 in our province today, and 39 of them are in Ottawa. 5 cases in Eastern Ontario, 2 in Leeds, Grenville, Lanark. No new cases today in Renfrew. The province is also reporting 8 more people have died from the virus in the past day. The Ottawa Hospital is looking for volunteers for a study into a new vaccine booster for COVID. You must be between the ages of 18 and 54 and have received 2 doses of an mRNA vaccine at least 4 months ago. If you're interested, contact the Ottawa Hospital. City News Time, 10:31. I'm Andrew Boyle. For news anytime, follow up online at ottawa.citynews.ca.
It's time to talk back
on the Rob Snow Show.
Have your say and call now.
613-750-1310.
What should happen to federal government workers who refuse to be vaccinated? Fired? Suspended without pay? Allowed to work from home? By my own very rough guess, okay, it's just a guess, estimate, I figure this is a policy promoted by Mr. Trudeau during the election campaign, confirmed again yesterday. Yes, we're working on it. Could affect tens of thousands of government workers in our city. We just received a statement from PSAC because we reached out to PSAC, the big public sector union, and we requested a spokesperson to come on our show and explain their position on it. And their statement is, we continue to be involved in the consultation process for Treasury Board's vaccination policy for federal employees. The government confirmed there would be no policy implemented until after the election, and we expect an update in the next few weeks. We remain in support of vaccination requirements to protect the health and safety of our members and their communities. PSAC will ensure the protection of our members' rights in the workplace, as well as their right to privacy, So that is... That's from the Public Service Alliance of Canada. Okay? Fired, suspended without pay, allowed to work from home. Okay? We could be talking about 30,000 people just in Ottawa alone. A lot of these are good paying jobs, really good paying jobs. And Mr. Trudeau said during his news conference yesterday, we are going to follow through on this. And if you these are my words, you want to keep that sweet paying government job, you're going to need to be fully vaccinated. That it will be one of the government's top priorities when Parliament resumes. Many jobs, careers, and livelihoods are on the line with this policy. What do you think should happen to the unvaccinated federal government worker? At 750-1310. Geoff in Ottawa. Geoff, you're on City News.
Good morning, Rob.
Hi, Geoff.
Trudeau's not saying anything because he can't do anything. Come on now, like Rob, you keep using the analogy of drinking and driving. That's made into law. You can't do it. It's a criminal offense. It is not a criminal offense to be inoculated. Now, there's nothing in the criminal code. The only way Trudeau can do anything with this is if it's passed in the House and made into law. Okay. Otherwise, stop all the air coming to your flapping gums. And
why are you talking to me like that, Geoff?
Well, because I'm angry with people saying Trudeau's going to do this. Trudeau can't do a thing without the House. Why do you think he wanted a majority?
Right.
He can't do anything.
Okay, but Mr. Singh is also in support of this, Geoff. Mr. Singh has also spoken out in favor of this.
It all depends on what Trudeau can't promise him.
Okay.
See,
but please,
no,
there's no reason to insult me like that, Geoff.
I didn't insult you.
Okay.
Where's the insult?
Why are you speaking to me like that? You know what? I've had enough of you. Goodbye. Mike in Orleans. Mike. You know, you can disagree without being disagreeable. Come on, people. Let's go.
Yes, I can.
Yeah.
Yes, I can, Rob.
Mike, thank you.
I'm hopping mad.
You are? Okay, you're hopping mad.
I'm hopping mad.
Don't be mad at me. I hope people aren't mad at me.
Definitely not. I'm hopping mad at Mayor Jimmy. I'm hopping mad at Premier Ford. And I'm hopping mad at Justin Trudeau. For a simple reason that they are not protecting our lives in Canada in the sense that they have let hospitals crumble. Thousands of people have died from COVID, and even more thousands of people are not getting the surgeries they need or the medical attention they need. And all this because they don't want to declare an emergency and have people vaccinated. Our hospitals are filled with anti-vaxxers, and yet the people that have just, tried to fight this pandemic the right way, we're sitting at home hoping that we don't have a heart attack or hoping that we don't have any kind of attack because the hospitals just won't be there for us. And as far as the public servants are concerned, I can tell you I was a public servant for 40 years. We should start with firing them. That might wake them up a little bit.
Right.
And then if they want to get vaccinated, we'll give them their jobs back.
Okay. All right. Thank you, sir. Thank you for your call. Yeah, appreciate it. 750-1310, 750-1310. Talk Back Hour, Rob Snow Show. In Perth, Brian, good morning.
Good morning.
What should happen to an unvaccinated federal government worker?
I think they should be fired because not only are they putting their employees in harm's way, what about their families and their friends when they go shopping or go anywhere?
Okay. I mean, there are...
That's all I wanted to say, and keep up the good work.
Okay, thank you, sir. Thank you. Yeah. I can take it. Don't you worry. Sarah, Ottawa. Sarah, you're on City News.
Hi, good morning. How are you?
Sarah. Good. Yes.
So
what should happen to the unvaccinated federal government worker?
Yeah, so the angry side of me says, of course, fire everybody. I am a federal employee, but I think the reality here is that we do live in a country where everybody has a choice, and I think everybody should have the choice to be vaccinated or not. Yeah. However,
choices have consequences.
That's right. Because, we make socially acceptable or unacceptable decisions every single day, and there are consequences for that. And I think what people are losing sight of here is, they're mistaking rights and privileges, and they're mistaking being inconvenienced with being oppressed. So if federal government employees don't want to get vaccinated, I think that they should be either allowed to work from home or should be subjected to regularly mandatory testing, because firing them would take away that basic human right that they have to choose what they want to do with their own body.
All right. Well, that seemed to be the path that the Treasury Board was on to begin with.
Right.
And then Trudeau said, no, it's not good enough.
Yeah, well, I
agree.
Testing,
masking, this kind of stuff's not good enough. Now, maybe that was that politics? Maybe he was just playing politics with it?
Yeah, I'm not really sure, but I think that, Justin's not going to be able to get away with firing people for that, because it is, and we do have the Charter of Human Rights for that reason. We live in a country where we're allowed to choose, but if I choose to go murder somebody, I'm going to lose some of my freedoms, but I'm still going to have the right to food, shelter, education, and medical care, as does everybody else, whether they're vaccinated or not.
Okay, Sarah, thank you.
I still believe everybody should get vaccinated.
Sure.
That's my opinion.
Okay.
And I thank you very much.
Thank you. Yep. So, I mean, I have basically three options here, okay? And again, talking about a policy that could potentially affect tens of thousands of people in our city. Fired, suspended without pay. That's what the government of Quebec is doing with healthcare workers. In 2 weeks, they say 15,000 can be suspended without pay or allowed to work from home. Since so many they're not in a traditional office setting anymore anyway. They're working in their own home. 750-1310. 750-1310. Oh, off to a slow start. It's rip-roaring now. Ronnie in Limoges.
Hey, how's it going?
It goes, sir. It goes with or without me. It always goes. What should happen to the unvaccinated federal government worker?
I personally believe there should be a 6-month suspension without pay.
Wow.
In which terms that gives them 6 months to, in my opinion, come to their senses.
Okay.
And in which case, also in the meantime, the government can hand out 6-month temporary employment jobs to give people the chance to get, experience into the workforce. That's how I see it, at least.
That's how you see it. Suspended without pay. Without pay. Make it hurt, right, Ronnie? Make it hurt. Okay. All right. Interesting. Thank you. Pakenham. Kevin, you're on City News. What should happen to an unvaccinated federal government employee, Kevin?
Well, I think, I think if you look at the bigger picture, I think they should be, sure, if they've got the choice, they can take the choice. If they're not going to get vaccinated, they should be fired. There's another piece to this that, I think we also should consider. I mean, during the pandemic, it was brought to our attention by Treasury Board that 27% of the workforce was actually furloughed, leave with pay, and really not doing anything. So they weren't working from home, and they didn't have to because of there's a clause in, I guess, a 699 clause in their contract. So, when you stand back and take a look at that, then you're talking about a quarter of the workforce that, did we miss them? I guess you just take it points to there's waste there that we can look at, and that's how regular business works. So let's we got to start treating it like business. That's a big problem in my opinion.
Okay, maybe this is a way to reduce the size of the federal payroll.
Well,
in Ottawa, 30,000 unvaccinated employees no longer work for the federal government. They won't be replaced. Maybe something like that, Kevin. I don't know.
That's what I think.
All right, so, Kevin. Thank you. Interesting.
We'll see. Thanks.
All right, we'll see. Maybe this is the downsizing plan. If you're not vaccinated, you're not coming back to work. Brendan in Blackburn Hamlet.
Yes, spreaders. Yes. Why should we allow them to spread?
Okay, I don't think they should be allowed to spread, Brendan. But the real question is, what should the consequences be, Brendan? That's what I'm asking. Should they be fired?
I think they should be absolutely fired.
Absolutely fired.
Yes.
Not allowed to work from home.
Oh, yes, they can work from home.
Work from home. Okay. Well, now that's a lot better than being fired then, Brendan, right?
Well, I have many friends who work from home.
Sure.
Who are not spreading.
Not spreading.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Brendan. Thank you. Okay. This one here. Okay, Chris in Prescott. Chris.
Rob, how are you?
Oh, it's a difficult one today, Chris, but let's get through it here together. We're all in this together, right, Chris?
Absolutely.
What should happen to what should happen to a federal government worker who refuses to be vaccinated?
Well, I was just in Shoppers Drug Mart, interestingly enough, and I'm speaking with a Upper Canada District School Board employee.
Oh, yeah.
Who is unvaccinated.
Unvaccinated?
He was waiting to get a vaccine test test because they have to get tested every 48 hours if they're not back.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Quite interesting.
Yeah, isn't that interesting?
Yeah. But they should be able to work from home, I think. It's kind of silly for them to not be able to. It is a right, but everybody else has a right to a safe workplace.
Sure. Yeah, I don't want the person in the cubicle next to me not being vaccinated.
That's exactly it.
Right, that's my thing. But
me too.
We don't have office towers filled with government workers at cubicles right now.
Yeah.
And nobody can tell us when that's going to change. Anytime soon. So, all right, Chris, thank you. Thank you. Yep. We'll stop here. Final quarter of the Talkback Hour is coming up next. Talking about vaccination and the federal government workforce, which Trudeau said, I'm sticking to my election rhetoric. And if you're not fully vaccinated, you can't work for the government of Canada. That's Trudeau's position. What's yours? 750-1310, Rob Snow Show on City News.
I'm blessed to be married to someone who is a scientist and spent a lot of time following what was happening over in China ahead of time. So he did give us the heads up that this was coming. Not that we believed him right off the bat, but when it did happen very, very quickly, we were prepared. We had hand sanitizer and we were set up to not close our doors. So we locked the kitchen down at Wellington Street, but we left this kitchen open. We put in protocols immediately. We only allowed our very small crew of 4 or 5 people in at the time. No deliveries were allowed to come in or out of the building without, they just weren't allowed in and out of the building. So we met them at the loading dock and had very strict protocols in place right away. We had masks and hand sanitizer and the whole thing. So we're very lucky from that perspective, and we're able to, learn as we went as far as doing small, individually packed caterings, the frozen soup program, food for the Ottawa mission. So we didn't have to close the kitchen and then learn how to reopen it. We just were able to modify and shift as we needed to. Because of our partnership with the Ottawa mission, we were able to very quickly help support them. They were able to send us some product and some supplies, so it wasn't a burden on our business, and we were able to supply the staffing and the packaging to help produce that when they needed it the most. And we produced about 1,400 meals a week to complement their meals, and we started our soup program right away. We realized very quickly that there was a need in the community to get together and all work together, not only to support local, but also just to support all the people that were suddenly in a position of, being locked down and not being able to get out. So by starting that soup program, our community, our clients got online and started making donations for the soups, and we were able to produce the soups and get them back out to people that needed it. We're right now currently making 150 liters of soup per week, but we've made, I would say, 5,000 or 6,000, easily since the pandemic. Probably more. I'd have to do the math, but lots. I think everybody in the city has to be very aware of how blessed we were to have great weather this summer and people were able to get out and about, and that's going to shift. So we do have to be much more aware of who our most vulnerable is, and I really think we have to work together as groups. There are so many organizations in the city that are doing something and contributing and working together, and I think it doesn't matter who, but see what you can do to just step up and help them, whatever it is, whether it's driving or delivering food, or someone has extra zucchini in their garden, or if they can afford to donate some money to any of these organizations. I just think we all have to work together. We're smarter and wiser than we were the first time.
Hello. On the Rob Snow Show. The phone lines are open at 613-750-1310.
Now, the Rob Snow Show continues.
Mandatory vaccines, our topic for the hour. Drudge is linking through a story that it says YouTube bans all anti-vax content, and it links through to a Washington Post story. Dateline San Francisco headlined, YouTube is banning prominent anti-vaccine activists, blocking all anti-vaccine content. All anti-vaccine content. And it says, as part of a new set of policies aimed at cutting down on anti-vaccine content on the Google-owned site, YouTube will ban any videos that claim that commonly used vaccines approved by health authorities are ineffective or dangerous. The company previously blocked videos that made those claims about coronavirus vaccines, but not for ones for other vaccines like those for measles or chickenpox. So that's an interesting development right there. We're talking about the vaccine mandate that was proposed by Mr. Trudeau during the election campaign, because it was all very political at the time, and now they're working on the policy. You have politics and policy. And essentially, the previous policy from the Treasury Board of Canada Secretariat was essentially the same position as Erin O'Toole's policy during the election campaign. But it was an election campaign, and it wasn't about policy, it was about politics, and the Liberals wanted to portray the Conservatives as being wishy-washy on vaccines and public safety. And the Liberals said that's not good enough. You have to be tougher. And they disowned this policy from Treasury Board, called it erroneous, and took this much firmer stance. That vaccines are going to be mandatory if you want to work for the government. No ifs, ands, or buts. And they really tied up O'Toole in knots over that one. They really, really did. On the Quebec side, the Legault government has taken this position, especially in the healthcare sector. And the Montreal Gazette is reporting this morning that 15,000 healthcare workers will be suspended without pay 2 weeks from now. Suspended without pay. And half of those workers, 7,500 of those workers, deal directly with patients, and they're not vaccinated. And Premier Legault is saying, you don't get your shot, you're going to be suspended without pay. I wonder if that's going to be a difference maker. I also wonder, just given the horror stories of the Quebec healthcare system, how it continues to function with a loss of 15,000 workers, 7,500 frontline healthcare workers. But that is the course of action that the government has decided on. To the phone lines. Murray in Kemptville. Murray, you're on City News. Murray.
Good morning, Rob.
What should happen to an unvaccinated federal government worker?
Option number one, termination or firing.
Wow.
My comment on that, there have been a number of very good and very well thought out and very reasonable observations made this morning about Charter of Rights, etc. That's fine and dandy. And I don't think we can argue too strenuously about options in our lives. But on the other side of it, we are facing a very, very deadly virus. It has incredible and very horrific consequences if not taken seriously. And we've got too many double standards, government-wise and otherwise, throughout our society, all the way from the courts, etc. In terms of the most pressing at the moment, two double standards relative, or however many, relative to vaccinations. The armed forces are required. I don't see any reason for the public service to not be required as well. The one hindrance, the Prime Minister's reluctance to go after and perhaps annoy, particularly PSAC, that was brought up earlier, because PSAC is a big supporter of the Liberals, and that's fine. That's their choice. But we can't live with too many choices at this moment in time, specifically related to the COVID-19 problem.
Okay, thank you, Murray. Thank you. Great call. Great call. Rob in Nepean, a wonderful place to be in. You're on City News, Rob.
Good morning, Rob.
Yes, sir. What should happen? What should happen to an unvaccinated government worker?
I like to consider myself a very reasonable man, and I understand people's default constantly to the Charter and the Human Rights Tribunal. But the whole thing about rights, it's, yes, you have a choice, but it's balanced with consequences. And anybody who's taken a decent civics course in high school should know that. It's not a matter of your right to choose. Yes, you have a right to choose not to put the vaccine in your body, but everybody else in society has a right to choose then that you are not able to participate in society fully. That's our right to choose as the majority. As for the public servants, they should get 6 months without pay, and during that time, their pension contributions should not be made. So there goes their fully indexed pension that nobody else gets. And at the end of 6 months, asked again, will you get vaccinated? If the answer is no, then I'm afraid you're no longer necessary.
All right. Okay. Thank you. Very good. Thank you, Rob. Thank you. Simple, he says. If only it were that simple. Jerry in Ottawa. Jerry, you're on City News.
How you doing, sir?
I'm hanging in there. I'm on this side of the grass, Jerry.
Good stuff. Well, I think they should be suspended without pay and not allowed to work from home either.
And not allowed to work from home.
Yes,
okay.
Because if you think about it, our healthcare system, they're forced. They have to get their vaccinated, right? So if they get suspended because they're not vaccinated, a nurse can't work from home. So why should they have the rights to work from home?
Okay. All right, Jerry. Thank you. Thank you. One standard for all workers, in other words, Jerry, right? Yeah, okay. Fair enough. I know PSAC in its original statement back in August said it would push for a work from home compromise, that should be a legitimate alternative. Paul, Canada, you're on City News. Paul.
Yeah, hi, Rob.
Hi, Paul.
So what I would suggest is, like, for example, my wife and I work for private companies, and we're both still working from home. So I think, to be honest, I think this is all going to turn out to be something similar to what Aaron O'Toole was suggesting, where you try to get as many people vaccinated, and the people that refuse or whatever, I would accommodate them as much as possible with working from home.
Okay.
And the one thing I hadn't be interested to hear what a lawyer thought of this, but I've been around for 58 years now, and I kind of, this smells like a lawsuit to me.
I suspect that. I think it's only a matter of time before people in robes are deciding this one, sir.
Yeah, yes, the thing is, we're, as taxpayers, we're the ones who could be paying for people's retirement as a result of being wrongfully dismissed. And hey, it's just the government's money. Why would we worry about it, right?
Yeah. Okay. Thank you, Paul. Thank you.
Thanks.
Yeah. Accommodation, work from home. Windfall for labor lawyers, probably. Jordan Greeley. Jordan.
Hey, Rob.
Hey.
Good perspective here today.
Okay.
I like where the previous caller was going. I don't know how the legalities would work, but if you're someone who's been working from home, say, for the last year, I'm not sure how they can justify firing you, even if you refuse the vaccination. I'm not sure how that would work.
Okay.
And I think we also need to keep in mind, people seem to be getting a little over their skis with some of this stuff. Even if you're vaccinated, and everybody knows this, but you can still spread. So as far as using the vaccine or believing somebody in the cubicle next to you is kind of a threat to you if you're vaccinated, and they're only a threat if they're not vaccinated. I think we need to kind of pump the brakes on that a little bit, because the data, I realize there's different studies out there showing that vaccinated are less likely, but I'm not sure if that's been fully determined yet. So maybe we need a little bit more data before we can move forward with that. I'm a PS and I'm fully vaccinated. I go back and forth on this.
Yeah. Okay, Jordan. Sure. Thank you for all your calls. Thank you. That's the first time I've ever heard that phrase before. Have you ever heard this phrase? People are getting over their skis. I like that. You're not supposed to be over your skis. Jordan, I really like that phrase, and I might borrow it sometime. People are getting, some people are over their skis, all right. Rob Snow Show, City News.
news in Ottawa and the Valley. This is City News, now on 101.1 FM and 1310 AM.
It's Wednesday, September 29th. Good morning. I'm Andrew Boyle. Right now in Ottawa, 11 degrees. It's 12 in Smiths Falls. Here's what's making news in Ottawa and the Valley. Ontario is reporting 8 additional deaths and 495 more cases of COVID-19 today. Of the new cases, 39 are in Ottawa. Eastern Ontario has 5. Leeds, Grenville, Lanark with 2 additional cases. Renfrew County reporting none. The new cases come from just over 36,400 tests that were completed, and 1.7% of them came back positive. The World Health Organization is reporting the global number of new coronavirus cases and deaths continued to fall in the past week. That agency recorded a 10% drop in both the number of new infections and the number of deaths. Now, Charles de Ledesma tells us this morning it does foresee a possible COVID-19 spike, though, as winter approaches.
Although in Asia, the number of coronavirus deaths has dropped by nearly a quarter, WHO is warning there would likely be more spikes of COVID-19 as the Northern Hemisphere enters winter. The disease spreads more easily during winter as people spend more time indoors. Social distancing restrictions also are being relaxed in many countries that have a relatively high level of vaccination.
Now, the WHO says disease spreads more easily during winter as people spend more time indoors. City News Time, 11:02. Now your forecast with meteorologist Jill Taylor.
It's a rather cool start to our Wednesday. It will be even cooler for tomorrow morning. Do have a slight chance of showers for today and tonight. High near 15 degrees to 6 for the low. For today, the high, 15.
And right now, 11 degrees in Ottawa. It's 12 in Smiths Falls. A dog was rescued this morning from a high-rise building. Firefighters entered a unit of a building on Richmond Road east of Woodruff. The fire service reports no injuries in the fire, which was contained to one unit. Ottawa police looking for witnesses to a collision. This involved a car and a bicycle just before 7 o'clock last night at Bronson and Somerset Street West. The collision between the black Cadillac and a pink bicycle sent the bike rider, a 58-year-old man, to hospital with life-threatening injuries. Investigators would like to speak to anyone who witnessed the collision or assisted first responders but did not give a statement to police. Also, anyone who may have dash cam footage is encouraged to contact Ottawa Police. Tomorrow, a new support housing will be opening up in Ottawa for people and families who've experienced homelessness.
It was in 2019 that the Shepherds of Good Hope housing facility was approved by the City of Ottawa. Now it is finally opening. Shepherds of Good Hope President Deidre Freiheit says that the housing unit will allow at least 42 people to become part of the community again.
Once they obtain housing with the supports that they need, then they can be there for good, and they become part of the community again. And it's amazing to see how, people change and how their health changes, and they reconnect with their families, and that's the beauty of supportive housing.
The city has also chipped in $7 million for this project, which is the Shepherd's 5th housing facility. Perishka Gopal-Kista, City News.
And I'm Andrew Boyle. For News Anytime, follow up online at ottawa.citynews.ca.
He's a pillar of community opinion.
The Rob Snow Show returns
on Rogers TV and City News.
101.1 FM
and 1310 AM.
Heave hi, ho, the best man in Ottawa was Mopperoy Joe. Mopperoy Joe. Big Joe Mopperoy paddled into Mattawa all the way from Ottawa in just one day. Hey, on the River Ottawa, the best man we ever saw was Big Joe Mopperoy, the old folks say. Come and listen and I'll tell you what the old folks say. Daddy say Big Joe had an old pet frog, bigger than a horse, and he barked like a dog. And the only thing quicker than a train upon a track was Big Joe riding on the bullfrog's back. Heave hi, ho, the best man in Ottawa was Mopperoy Joe. Mopperoy Joe.
Bruce McIntyre's here. Time for Valley View. He's with the Eganville Leader, and the paper is out today. Good morning, Bruce McIntyre.
Good morning, Rob Snow.
And where have we reached you today?
Well, I'm back in Renfrew. Had a busy morning. Okay. I was in Eganville and Golden Lake and Arnprior, and now I'm in Renfrew.
You're like a Johnny Cash song. You've been here, there, and everywhere. What's going on? What have you seen? What do you know? What's the news?
What's the news? It's been a quiet week. A lot of municipal politics kind of taking the front page and the main pages. The big news is for Eganville residents in our immediate catchment is the Lake Clear property. Lake Clear is at it again. I hate it.
Right. Here we go with Bruce's cell phone again. You got to stand still. There we go. Okay. All right. Good. Much better.
I'm sorry about that. The Lake Clear lake has been, the last 5 or 6 years, controversy is its middle name.
Yes. They should call it Lake Controversy, actually, instead of Lake Clear. This was the place where they were trying to come up with a new RV policy that people were complaining there were too many RVs on too many properties, right? That's if correct. I remember, right? And now the controversy is, the boat launch. Who owns the boat launch? Give us the latest
question.
On this. Right.
Excellent question. Yes, there's one boat launch available in the lake, and it is located directly in front of the Moose on the Beach Resort. And the previous owner was actually a counselor in Bonaire Valley. He sold it about 5 years ago. And the new owners have just, basically status quo, but residents around the lake are using it. And the Bonaire Valley Township thought they owned the boat launch, and the resort thought they owned the boat launch. And the Lake Clear residents just keep using it. They don't care. They're just going to use it.
Like whoever. This is the only boat launch, so we're using it. We don't care who owns it, right?
That's right. There is a second boat launch, not quite as what's the word I'm looking for? Useful. On the other end of the beach. That caused a lot of controversy a few years ago because people were parking on the side of the road and the residents didn't like that. So anyway, the township is going to do a title search to see who exactly owns the launch. They'd like to get a hold of the previous owner, but the previous owner, Bob Peltzer, is biking somewhere in the world. We don't know where he is. He's a real cycling enthusiast.
Okay.
So the good news is it's coming into the fall season. Most of the boats are out of the water now, so it shouldn't be too controversial over the winter, but bless those people at Lake Clear. One thing after another. The other, you mentioned at the top, the RV issue. For your listeners, it's been going on for 5 years. One of the residents didn't like the idea of have a neighbor have 2 RVs on his property, so he got everybody all riled up, and they were going around and they were able to convince Bonaire Valley to come up with some type of bylaw to limit or restrict the number of RVs on the property. So Bonaire Valley did that, and they came up with a bylaw of maximum 5 RVs.
Maximum 5. I love that. That's kind of accommodating, isn't it? Isn't that accommodating?
I thought so. So the residents were not happy.
Right.
The residents were not happy, so they took the township to court. They were suing them, and they were scheduled to go before the Ontario Lands Tribunal. Yeah. But the township pulled the RV bylaw and other bylaws because the county just passed an official plan. And so they're going to use that as a reference to go back and look at their land plan use and to figure out what is the best policy for this. So they save themselves a headache in front of the court, which would have cost the taxpayers money, and hopefully they'll be able to get this nailed down by 2025, hopefully.
By 2025.
Well, I mean, it's been going on for years and years. Just one of those things that just keeps. It's kind of your OC Transpo and your light rail just keeps going and going and not going.
The problem with light rail is it's not going. That's the problem with light rail. But I love that though. We've got a real problem with RVs on properties up here. We better come up with a bylaw. Okay, let's study it. Let's debate it. All right, let's have a vote. All right. No more than 5.
That's right. Maximum 32 feet length.
No more than 5. Okay.
So it's unique. It's a small town issue that captures the hearts and minds.
Lake Clear. Yeah.
You got to come visit, Rob. It's a beautiful spot. Just don't bring your boat.
Or my RV, apparently.
Or your RV.
Yeah,
so
okay.
that has kept Bonaire Valley Council a little busy. And
so all you're missing now, you need a controversy about ATVs next, or snowmobiles, or something like that, Bruce.
Don't worry, that'll come. In Renfrew, they allow ATVs on all the roads except the connecting highways, Highway 132, Highway 60. You're allowed to go anywhere else. But I've noticed through the summer that the police had some ATVs pulled over because they were on the highway. They said, "Well, we're in the city limits," so that'll come down the road.
Okay. So front page of the paper today, the Eganville leader is in his 120th year. By the way, 120 years.
Yeah, wow, time flies.
The Eganville leader. Out today, $2, tax included. No COVID vaccine policy for BV staff. And I'm off an hour of pretty hot talk radio about vaccine policies for the federal government. Bruce used to be a federal government employee at one time, way back in the day, before he decided to enter the respectable trade of journalism. So for Bonnechere Valley, what's their vaccine policy for their staff? Kind of a smaller. There isn't going to be one. Okay, all right.
Yeah, they've been. Some might call it rolling the dice, but they've been successful so far with no cases reported, and it's an individual choice to get the vaccine, and hand washing, social distancing has proven to be effective so far. And as the mayor says, she doesn't want to shame the employees, so doesn't want to point them out and single them out as far as a vaccine goes. So. They're not going to help on it. The council has decided to move forward unless something really radical breaks. They're going to continue that non-policy policy.
Okay.
So we'll see what happens. Some of the townships, some municipalities around here haven't really formally adopted a policy. The reason being, we have such a high vaccination rate. Okay. We're one of the highest in the province. So it really hasn't been an issue so far.
Well, that's good. That's good.
So we'll see what goes there. And it's ironic because the same day the hospitals made an announcement with the Renfrew County District Health Unit that as of October 15th, if you do not have a minimum you need to be double vaccinated to enter any hospital.
Right.
Now, if you're a patient, you get hit by a car, they'll bring you in. But if you're a visitor, a volunteer, a staff member, a patient, you need to have that double vaccination, or there's the back door and we'll help you out there. So that's all the hospitals. That's Deep River, Arnprior, Renfrew, Barry's Bay, Pembroke. So it'll be interesting to see how that unfolds on October 15th.
As of October 15th. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
But I don't see it being a big issue because we are rather compliant around here. I was listening to the top of the hour, your news broadcast, and we have 0 cases today reported in Renfrew County. We did have 2 last week, both in schools. One was the Our Lady of Fatima Catholic School in Renfrew, and the other one was St. Joseph's High School in Renfrew. They had a couple of students that tested positive, and they were sent home. Mm-hmm. And there hasn't been any follow from that so far. I guess it was very isolated, which is good.
Right.
But our numbers are staying low, which is good news for us.
That's good.
We're working hard.
Okay. There's a story in the paper this week in the Eganville Leader, Shaw Woods Outdoor Community Center. Tell me about that. The Shaw Woods Outdoor Center, it's called.
It is a beautiful, beautiful 50-hectare piece of land donated by the Shaw family. The Shaw family, by the way, a little trivia for you, Rob. They are Canada's oldest private owned lumber company.
Oh,
that's
okay.
Kind of over 100 years. Dana Shaw is the 4th generation. He's basically runs the company now. So they donated Shaw Woods to the community. It's a beautiful walking trail, nature reserve. They have 4,000 students come through there a year to learn about nature and forestry. But if you're unable to, if you have mobility issues, you wheelchair or crutches, you couldn't go on those little walks with the rest of your classmates or anyone for that matter. So they went out and purchased a very all-terrain wheelchair. And what that is, it will allow individuals to go on the trails. It's made specifically for rugged trails, and it's a great move by the Shaw Woods Group. And this again is another example of a volunteer-driven venture. It's been there about 15 years, and just the work they do there is amazing. I go hiking there about 3 or 4 times a year. It's just every time I discover something new, it's just a beautiful little retreat. And I know last year on Thanksgiving, when I went, I think everybody was from Ottawa. You can just tell because they're showing up in sandals and bare feet to go hiking on trails. I said, well, good luck to you. But in this case, the wheelchair is available for anyone to request to use it, and I think you'll see it getting very well used. And during the opening ceremony, we had our MPP, John Yakubowski, there, along with the Shaws and other board members to to promote this wheelchair, and I think it's just an amazing move, and they should be congratulated because this is not a cheap apparatus. I don't know the exact cost. It's over $10,000 for sure, and the board members and volunteers raised the money and made that purchase for the individuals.
All right, hang on the line, Bruce. Oh, you got a few minutes? You can stick around for a few more minutes here.
Rob, I've got more time.
Oh, great. Okay, a few more items that are happening up the line that I want to ask Bruce about. When we come back, Valley View, Rob Snow Show. Bruce with the Eganville Leader. This is City News.
Ottawa icon.
The Rob Snow Show returns
on Rogers TV and City News.
101.1 FM and 1310 AM.
We're back with Bruce McIntyre, Valley View. He is our Ottawa Valley correspondent. I was just leafing through my weekly edition here of your newspaper, and I thank you very much. Page A7 is very curious from an advertising point of view. I do wonder if your team did this deliberately. On the right-hand side, you have an ad, Algonquin College Virtual Speaker Series presents CBC's Quirks and Quarks host Bob McDonald, how the COVID-19 pandemic has affected climate change. Monday, October 4th, funded in part by the government of Canada. All right, so that's happening Pembroke, at the Pembroke College of Algonquin College. Okay, well, I'd be interested. I wonder how well that will be attended. We'll see. And then on the other side, you have Freedom Rally. in the Valley. Pembroke, Ontario, Saturday, October 2nd. Riverside Park. Say no to vaccine passports. No more lockdowns. We are all essential. Police on guard for thee. So that's an interesting contrast in advertising there in your newspaper, Bruce. I have to say, Freedom Rally in the Valley. Well, I wonder what will have the bigger turnout. CBC's Bob McDonald on COVID-19 and climate change, or Freedom Rally in the Valley?
Both barn burners. Based on my previous experience, I went to the Pembroke Rally. They had one back in the summer, and that was a rally I didn't recognize. Very few people. I don't recognize 3 people.
Oh, really? Okay.
Yeah,
okay.
They were all out-of-towners. And it was not really well organized, and no one really knew who was in charge. And it's just kind of an ad hoc thing. So I'm not sure if they'd be more organized this year.
But you've told me, and I mean, it's something you've paid attention to throughout all of this. There's not a big anti-vax sentiment up there or anything like in the
not vocal. No, there are some that are going to be adamant, but as far as being vocal and being in your face and being well known, no, there isn't. Not very little. So I'm not sure why they're coming back here. I think perhaps it might be riding the coattails of success. Well, you can call it success of the People's Party of Canada. The last election, the candidate David Ainsworth, he ran 2 years ago for the PPC, and this year he tripled his vote count. He went from just over 1,200 to 4,600.
Wow!
So he really grabbed the interest of the people who like to complain and like something to latch onto when life's not treating them well. And this is just my personal opinion. I call the PPC the party of complainers. They'll bring in people that have a gripe, they have a grudge, they want to let it be known, and it gets them. And they're very good people, but I'm not sure how this rally is going to go. It's hard to say.
All right.
It's hard to say.
Okay.
But it's an ad. We'll take it.
Sure. It's another one here. And I saw this and I thought, a Felski Shoes in Killaloe is closing?
I saw that too.
And then it said, we thank you for your patronage. Look forward to serving you again in the spring. In the meantime, come visit us at our Barry's Bay location. So I wonder, is it become seasonal now, maybe, in Killaloe or what? Because that's I only know of this place because of interviewing you, and I thought that place was like a landmark of Felski Shoes in Killaloe.
It is. It very much is. In the wintertime, Killaloe and a couple other communities, they really become isolated. It's not a lot of traffic goes through, and they will open they keep the second branch they have up in Barry's Bay. That will stay open, and I guess Sean Felski, the second generation of the family running that shoe store, will reopen up in the spring back in Killaloe. But yeah, I saw that too. I was like, whoa, what's going on here? But again, it's just a seasonal thing. I guess Sean, maybe Sean must have a life, and maybe 80-hour weeks are not doing it for him anymore.
Yeah. Now, over the last few months, we've done a few things talking about how red hot Valley real estate was. You put your property up for sale, boom, gone, just like that, which was kind of the situation, all over the place, especially a lot of people, fleeing the city for country life and small town life, right?
Yeah.
What's your sense of things now?
The brakes are on.
The brakes are on. Okay, that's interesting. Yeah, okay.
We had a story last week, little bird, that the Renfrew County Real Estate Board released some numbers for the month of August, and they were down compared. It's been almost 16 months of nonstop increased sales month after month, and last month was the first time since we've really been paying attention that it slowed right down. It was not a record-breaking month, and sales really came down back to normal. Let's just say that it became a normal thing. I think part of that can be attributed to end of season. People don't want to move this time of year. Secondly, there wasn't a large rotation of troops coming in or out of Petawawa, and that really affects the real estate market.
Really? Okay.
You've got troops being deployed or being marched out. It does affect the real estate market, especially in the Pembroke Petawawa area. So that might be part of the reason as well. Little trends. You don't have that in Ottawa, but here we have it. So
all right. Okay. So catch the ace. Here we go again. Another big time catch the ace jackpot is up for grabs. Oh, man. I love this story. Week 40 now. Week 40 for the Renfrew Victoria Hospital Catch the Ace. What's the jackpot at now?
It's just over $340,000.
Wow.
It's been quietly creeping up, and the reason I did a story, I was just happened to be in the grocery store, and I saw week 40. I said, week 40 already?
Wow.
So I called the executive director, and she said, you know what? That's really a pivotal point for the 40th week. That's when people start to pay attention. And the same thing happened 2 years ago. It was actually week 35, and as you know, Rob, it just steamrolled and steamrolled.
Oh, yeah, people were driving from Ottawa to go buy tickets, right? So, yeah.
And they sold over 1 million tickets total during that run last year. And this year they're doing this. There's not nearly as many for a couple of reasons. One, both Pembroke and Arnprior are doing their own draws, so they don't want to go in their backyard selling tickets. And secondly, COVID. We don't have the big thing was a Thursday night draw at Finnegan's Roadhouse, and if you weren't there by 6 o'clock, you were not getting a chair. And the draw took place at 7, and it was just packed. It was yahooing and cheering and screaming all night. And hopefully we'll get back to that again. But it is going to, if we go to week 52, you're going to see $1 million again very easily. And
you're already up to 340 after 40 weeks.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, and this is when
you got 12 cards left, I guess.
Yeah,
right?
the last 12 weeks are when you make your large ticket sales because people, this is interesting. I know my better half, she's always bugging me to buy tickets. I said, oh, really? Do we have to? But it's support the hospital. And last time they raised $2.5 million for the hospital, which is incredible for a small community like Renfrew.
Yeah.
And this year their goal, they don't have a goal, but all funds raised will go back into the emergency department to get new equipment and just to do some upgrades. So we'll keep you posted on that.
Oh, yeah. 40 weeks, 300 plus grand up for grabs. Renfrew Victoria Hospital. Catch the Ace. Okay. All right.
Wonderful little hospital.
All right. Thanks, Bruce, for the update this week. Great to hear from you.
No problem, Rob. And I wish all your listeners well over the weekend. And I'll be at Golden Lake tomorrow for the National Day of Reconciliation for the First Nations, and it'll be interesting.
Excellent stuff. We're going to talk about that coming up right after the news with Algonquin Elder Claudette Commanda. National Day of Truth and Reconciliation. That's Bruce McIntyre from the Eganville Leader. This is the Rob Snow Show on City News.
#1 for local news in Ottawa and the Valley. This is City News, now on 101.1 FM and 1310 AM.
This is Wednesday, the 29th of September. Good morning, I'm Jason White. Right now in Ottawa, mostly cloudy, 12 degrees, 12 in Smiths Falls as well. Here's what's making news this hour. The last 4 miners that were trapped in a mine near Sudbury are back above the surface. All 39 miners are in good shape after a team of responders from Valley's rescue team and the Ontario Mine Rescue Agency helped the workers make the long trek up a ladder system, including some who were at the 1,200-meter level in the Totten mine. Ottawa firefighters have rescued a dog from a burning apartment in the city's West End. The blaze began around 9 this morning in a 4th-floor apartment on Richmond Road. The dog was reunited with its owner outside and was not hurt. No people injured either, and the fire was contained to the one unit. COVID-19 cases in Ontario today, 495. 8 more people have died. The province says Ottawa has 39 of the new cases. The Eastern Ontario Health Unit 5, Leeds, Grenville, Lanark 2, and no new cases today in Renfrew County, but updated numbers from the local health units will come this afternoon. The first National Truth and Reconciliation Day is tomorrow, an event being hosted tonight on Parliament Hill. The event will honor lost Indigenous children, residential school survivors, and all of the lives and communities affected by the residential school system. The event starts at 7:30 tonight by the Centennial Flame. City News Time, 11:31. I'm Jason White. For news anytime, follow up online at ottawa.citynews.ca.
Strong voice.
Strong opinions.
The Rob Snow Show returns on Rogers TV and City News.
101.1 FM and 1310 AM.
Tomorrow is National Day for Truth and Reconciliation. The National Day for Truth and Reconciliation. One of the recommendations, one of the 94 recommendations to come out of the final report from the Truth and Reconciliation Commission. What does the day mean? Claudette Commanda is back on City News. Algonquin elder from Kitigan, Zibi, Anishinabeg First Nation, Executive Director, First Nations Confederacy of Cultural Education Centers. Good morning.
Good morning, Rob.
It's really nice to hear from you. I'm so glad you could take the time for our listeners this morning.
Thank you for inviting me to speak to you.
When I hear you speak about truth and reconciliation, I've heard you speak on this radio station before about it. It's very inspiring. Makes me think, gosh, there might be hope for us yet. You know, what sort of progress are we making in the effort to reconcile all of this and what has happened in the past?
Well, there is progress. Absolutely, there is progress. And I do see progress each and every day. And the progress is coming from the people, from the grassroots collectively. Since May, or the first announcement, or when it hit the news of the findings of the 215 children in the unmarked graves at that former residential schools in Kamloops, BC, more and more concerned citizens, Canadian citizens, came forward and were just astonished. They were shocked, and they extended their hand and they said, "What can we do? We need to walk with you. We need to listen. We need to learn. We're here to help." And so progress is being made on a daily basis. And especially now with September 30th, it is the National Truth and Reconciliation Day, and it's a time. It's a time to honor the survivors, to remember, to grieve, and to pray for those children who never made it home, and of course for all the residential school survivors. We need to honor those survivors. It's also a time for Canadians, an opportunity for Canadians to learn about this history, because this residential school history is Canadian history, so therefore it is the history of Canadians as well. So progress is being made as slow steps. However, we have to be hopeful that we continue each and every day with enhanced progress.
The news about the unmarked graves, and how that really hit Canadians, Canadians who are not First Nations. Do you think that marked a turning point this year?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Oh, definitely. I can tell you this from my lived experience.
Okay.
What I've seen in the past, that each and every time that First Nations people gather we're marching up on Parliament Hill to raise the awareness of, whatever issue is that our people are experiencing, the breach of treaty rights, the loss of land, the murdered and missing Indigenous women, the child welfare system, the day schools, 60 schools, well, no matter what the issue is, and the issue is always relating to the breach of inherent and treaty rights. There's always the same people, the same group of Canadians that come forward to support us, the same First Nations, and there are many, many times that I felt so alone, and my heart was always so heavy, and tears were shed. Is that why are we always alone? Why? On June the 30th, when I was preparing for the march on July 1st, I said a prayer and I put it out there and I said, please let Canadians come and walk with us. Please let there be more that will come and join us. Please. And I can tell you, when I was on that march, and every few moments I would turn and I would see the crowd, the participants and those marchers joining us. The numbers were growing and growing. And when I stood on that podium with my grandson and I saw the entire Parliament Hill filled with Canadians from all walks, all wearing orange, I knew that the children in those unmarked graves, they made a difference, and that was a turning point, and we cannot go back. So it filled my heart with much joy and love, and I see the people coming together now, and they need to walk with us and be with us, and they need to listen and to learn, and it pleases my heart. So it's all about that progress being made, a turning point. There's no turning back at this point.
Yeah, I wanted to ask you if it's obviously because of the news of this year, much of the focus is on the legacy of residential schools, right? This day that is tomorrow. But to me, I think it's the totality of it. It is the missing, murdered Indigenous women issue, which is still with us. It's there's been progress on clean drinking water, but it's the very idea that it's 2021 and there are Canadians that don't have clean drinking water. It's just, what are we doing, right? It's substandard health outcomes, substandard education outcomes. To me, I think I'd like you're so much closer to it. It's about the totality of the issue to me.
You're absolutely right, and that is I feel that too as well, absolutely, and I've always been of that perspective, is that there are various issues, absolutely, but whether it's residential schools or day schools or child welfare or murder and missing Indigenous women, the lack of housing, the lack of drinking water, the lack of resourcing, the lack of land, the breach of treaty rights, on and on. Regardless of what that issue is, that one issue, no matter what the issue is, one issue, it impacts all our communities across, and yes, they're intertwined. Absolutely, they are. The loss of our children through residential school, day school, child welfare system, that speaks about the loss of land. It also speaks of the loss, because our children are our natural resources, but it is the totality, and they tell us that, we will deal with one issue at a time. No, you need to deal with all the issues, because if you're dealing with one issue, then more issues are being added. So are we ever going to diminish the numbers of those issues? No, we won't. So we have to look at it from a global perspective, and we have to deal with it on a collective matter.
Okay. When I drive through Kitigan, Zibi, for example, I see a lot of orange shirts. Like every driveway, every business has an orange shirt. It's really something to see. What does that orange shirt mean to you?
It represents the children. It represents all the children that were taken away from their homes, taken away from their families, their communities, their nation, and they were sent to those places called residential schools. All the children. It represents the children who did not make it home. It represents the children who are here. And when I speak in children, we know that now those children are adults, their parents, their grandparents, and their great-grandparents. But we cannot forget that residential schools was about targeting the children to take away our spirit, our culture, and identity. So it speaks about the children, and we must always look at it that they were children. They were children. So I see those orange shirts that are representing the children. And I thank Phyllis Jack for sharing her orange T-shirt experience with all of Canada, because that raises an awareness of what residential schools were truly all about. It was about the suffering that our children endured while they were in those places called residential schools. But it also speaks about survivors. It also speaks about the resilience, and it also speaks about the love that we need to have for one another, and that we must honor the survivors, because it is their resilience and their path of healing that opens spaces and places for all our children, First Nations children, to be recognized, and that they do matter.
A few days ago, there was news. Canadian Conference of Catholic Bishops promised $30 million to support, quote, Indigenous reconciliation projects for residential school survivors, their families and their communities across the country. What do you think of that pledge?
Well, I'll believe it when I see it. Were they not supposed to have done this years ago? And so why are they waiting now until the whole world now is demanding an answer from the churches to what their role in residential schools, and why were those children buried in unmarked graves?
Right, and there are issues, the demands for apologies from the Pope and reparations have been paid. Right.
Right.
So, yeah.
Well, I'll put it this way. When you look at the word reconciliation, it's a nice, warm, feel-good, fuzzy word. Mm-hmm. It's a lovely word.
Yeah.
I've always believed it has to be reconciliation, because action speaks louder than words. So be responsible, show action. So with respect to the question you asked about the Catholic Church, well, I will believe it when they show the action, and that if they are true to saying that they will raise $30 million and they're going to put those monies into the communities, well, then I will believe it when they actually do it.
Okay. What did you think of the prominence of Indigenous issues during the most recent federal election campaign? Did it get the attention that it deserved, do you think?
No.
No,
it did not get the attention that it so rightfully deserved. And, it was, I see it as comments that were made in passing, but were they in the forefront? No, and they should have been.
Okay.
Because, Canada is still on this, they're still on their vision, or embarking on what's called reconciliation. Well, you have to be true to the word by doing action. And yes, those issues should have been in the forefront with all those candidates. And not only just speaking about it, but also speaking about, the actions that are needed. Yes, look at the past and what was done.
Right.
What has been fulfilled from those 94 recommendations of the TRC call to actions? Yes, some have been done for sure, absolutely, but many are yet to be fulfilled. And even those that have been fulfilled or actioned, you must always continue to enhance those actions as well.
Well, it must be frustrating. We had the Truth and Reconciliation Commission. Mm-hmm. I think the report, if I'm not mistaken, came out 6 years ago, maybe something like that. 6 years ago.
Yes.
Had the inquiry into missing and murdered Indigenous women, right?
Yes.
How many inquiries and investigations do we really need? The recommendations are there.
That's right.
Right? Wouldn't you say?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I mean, we don't need any more studies. We don't need any more.
Surely by now we know what the issues are.
Well, exactly. Yeah. The Royal Commission on Aboriginal Peoples back in the 1990s specifically did their research and came up with all those recommendations. So why aren't those recommendations being fulfilled? Now here we are with you had the TRC, the call to actions. They're recommendations. They're guidelines. They're telling you what needs to be done. So do it.
Right.
Same with the inquiry on murder and missing Indigenous women. It's like, do it. Get moving. Well, I don't want to see another inquiry in the next 1 or 2 years, or let's do more call to actions. No. The actions, the recommendations are the actions. Do it.
Yeah.
We can't wait anymore. We cannot wait anymore. And if First Nations people are frustrated and we are grown impatient, and then we become, discouraged because of lack of action. I know that there are Canadians out there as well are just saying, like, what's going on? Like they're being just as frustrated as we are.
Yes, absolutely.
Absolutely, yes. And it's not just First Nations people that have to continue to raise their voice about, where is the reconciliation? When are things going to get moving? No, Canadians have to as well, because it's called responsibility, and we have a responsibility to ensure that. To correct the wrongs that have been done in the past, to ensure that they are not repeated. But let's move forward in a good way. And I always remember the words of my grandfather, the late William Commanda. We have to do this together as people through love and kindness. But we, as First Nations people, are sharing our wisdom, our knowledge, our kindness, and our love. Take the hand of love that we are offering you. We've included you in all of our thoughts and our prayers, and when we do stand to fight for any of our rights, for example, even the right to protect Mother Earth, it's not just for First Nations people, the right to clean drinking water or to protect Mother Earth. That is for everyone. That is for all peoples, and we include everyone in our prayers, in our thoughts, and in the actions that we need to do to ensure that today and tomorrow will be better lives for all of our children.
Thank you, Claudette Commanda.
Well, thank you, Rob.
For your wisdom today. I hope we can call upon you again sometime.
Anytime, my friend. Anytime. Take good care. Bye-bye.
She is amazing. Algonquin Elder Kitigan, Zibi, Executive Director, First Nation Confederacy of Cultural Education Centers. Claudette Commanda. 11:47, City News.
This affected us big time because when, how we are seasoned, we have clothes for the spring, clothes for the winter. That time, lots of clothes didn't arrive on time from Europe or from here because some factory shut down. So, and this put us in an odd position. We received not all the merchandise, part of the merchandise. And for us, we have to be careful, especially with the virus going on. It did affect the business, of course, like everybody else. We're not immune, and since the government helped, this did a little bit good for us too, but still affected all the sectors, especially clothing. You can see big corporation affected bad because nobody was thought it's gonna be like this. Earthquake might happen, we joke about it before, things might happen, but this was like a third war, but with a virus. So how to survive, that's the question, and we're doing our best to work with the mall, especially rent in a mall is very high. The government, they have certain, let's say, condition, like how many people will be in the mall or in the stores, etc. Yeah, it's a big factor, but of course, if my store has a back doors, or just will be better, it will be much better. At least we can have curbside much easy, because we have to shut down completely, And this left a mark on us, on everybody too. People always ask me, go online. Certain things you can go online. Let's say T-shirt, certain product people don't know how to fit, but when it comes to clothing. It's different completely. Let's say I have a customer comes, you can give him 44, but certain suit he might take 42, certain suit he might take 46. So, and how could, suit is not gonna fit the same. And I see people come back and they show me what they got online and not the same fabric. mostly young people, but if you really want to shop, you have to go to the store because everything will be around you. You want to be sure the color look good, the fit will look good, especially when you spend, doesn't matter how much money, whether 300 or 2,000, you know? You have to try, you have to see what's going on. Please don't be shy, contact us. It will be a pleasure for me to take a suit or coat or anything. Like sometimes people have a funeral, they have things, they have a wedding, they don't want to come to the mall. If I get all the information, I will go and meet them at their home or their business offices. I'm gonna start doing that, you know, and this will help the business and help the people. Like they're afraid to come to the mall for time being, or they're too busy at work. They cannot go anywhere at a certain time, so I'm glad to do that.
So keep up with Rob.
The Rob Snow Show returns on Rogers TV and City News, 101.1 FM and 1310 AM.
Talk about City of Ottawa issues, municipal issues, with Pat Uguccioni, the managing editor of your Community Voice newspapers. Good morning.
Good morning, Rob.
What's the big story?
Well, I don't know. You want to talk trains? You want to talk Canada North vacancy?
Well, I think we'll talk about it all, but the big story has to be the revelations this week about light rail, and there's so many. It's where do you start? Why don't we start with what are you hearing? Because you're very well connected. What are you hearing about how long the light rail system might actually be out of service, Pat? What are you hearing? What do you know?
I mean, I don't know anything more than, maybe you've seen in the press that it's at least 3 or 4 weeks. But, I've been asking the question, why is the free service in December and not as soon as these trains are back on? So I hope that these trains aren't going to be down until December. I've always wondered why they're making these, free transit in December, and why not right after these trains get back on the track. So I think there's some people thinking that this could be, longer than 3 or 4 weeks.
Well, it sounds like it could be.
Yeah. And Caroline Meehan asked a good question yesterday on Twitter. If that's the case, then is OC Transpo looking for some more buses? Because they obviously don't have enough buses to cover this whole city. They're taking them off local routes, and people are standing at their local.
Yeah, and if you don't have enough buses, do you have enough bus operators, bus drivers? Well, exactly. Right. Exactly. This was supposed to be part of the plan. I mean, here we are. We're in the closing innings here of 2021. This is not where we were ever meant to be, Pat, is, even mulling the purchase or maybe even short-term lease of transit buses. We were supposed to be kind of culling the fleet and reducing the payroll at OC Transpo through attrition, right? Because of light rail by now. So,
going back 2 years, the plan was to only hire bus drivers on contract because they didn't want to sign them up long term because we were switching over to light rail. So it's a bit of a mess, we'll say.
Oh, a bit of a mess. It's a massive mess because of the spillover effect. It's not just it's so much of a light rail story, but it's the light rail is just part of the story. It's and then we're back to doing buses with a bus fleet that isn't up to the task, and let's face it, a transitway that really doesn't exist anymore, Pat.
Right, and if you believe Farmer's Almanac, we're about to get hit with a pretty harsh winter. And you know how buses handle our winter, especially the
they've handled our winter about as well as light rail handled our winter.
Yeah, right. So. Yikes! I wouldn't want to be this new general manager of OC Transpo coming into this. She's a brave woman.
She is a brave woman. Yes, she is. Yes, she is indeed. What do you know about her?
I really don't know anything about her other than what I'm sure everyone's done.
She comes from Montreal Public Transit, right? So
she comes very, very well recommended, but her experience is on the bus side. She has no rail experience, apparently. So that tells me that she's going to run the bus company, and Michael Morgan is going to run the rail side of things. And so I think they're splitting John Manconi's job up into 3. and somebody will be in charge with transportation in general, traffic and that.
There was a time, let's talk about the political side of this. The mayor had this milestone this year where Jim Watson became the longest serving mayor in Ottawa's history, and there's already been all kinds of speculation. Is he going to run again? Is he going to run again? Next year is municipal election year. The municipal election is in the fall, right? It's in the fall. So about a year from now, right? And the campaign usually begins in earnest. I don't think you're really allowed to campaign until, 6 months before?
Well, no, actually, they changed it the last election. You can register January 1st now. That it was to give non-incumbents a bit more of a
runway, bit more runway. Yeah. Okay.
Exactly.
All right. Yeah. All right. So it may be in full swing even before that. So that's interesting.
Some are already musing about running. So.
Well, yeah, I had Bob Shirelli on the show a few days ago. So, and we know that he's going to be in. But I have kind of worked from this assumption up until this point is that I think Mayor Watson would not want to leave until phase 2 was done. And that would kind of be his swan song. Look, I did it. I got it. Not only did I shepherd the first phase through, I also got out to Moody Drive, and I got it out to, where does it go? Trim Road, I think, phase 2, right?
Yeah, but I think most of it is beyond 2022. I mean, the part out to Riverside South was supposed to be 2022, but if you hear, what you're hearing at City Hall, lots of people are hearing that even that might not make...
I guess my point is, and we'll wrap it up on this point, okay? These ongoing issues here with light rail and its performance and all the questions, do you think that makes Jim Watson say, it's time to take my own walk in the snow? What do you think?
I don't think so. I don't think this will be. I don't. But what I do think is that I don't think he's going to run unopposed this time. I think there's going to be some, at least one or two members of council, and like you say, Bob Shirelli and others. So I don't think this will be a walk in the park for Jim Watson in this election. I think he'll face some pretty stiff competition should he run.
Very good. Not a walk in the park.
No.
And not a walk in the snow.
And there's some people, I'm sure you're hearing the same thing, are pressuring him to make a decision as soon as possible, because there are people on council that are considering running, whether he does. And there's some people that if he stays, they want to go, and if he goes, then they may run for mayor. So I think there's a lot of pressure on Mr. Watson to make his announcement a lot sooner than he had originally intended.
Thanks, Pat. Good to hear from you. Pat Uguccioni, Ottawa Community Voice Newspapers. Rob Snow Show, City News.
The Rob Snow Show.
Weekdays 9 to noon on Rogers TV and City News.
101.1 FM and 1310 AM.
Number 1 for local news in Ottawa and the Valley.
This program is brought to you by Ignite TV. Now you're in command. Visit Rogers.com for more